am. I could call the regular meeting of CCWD Wednesday, June 10th, 9 a.m. If you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and good morning. And Mona, you'll call the roll.
Yes, Director Davison.
Here.
Director Rademan.
Here.
President Underhill.
Here.
Director Mills. And Director Strange.
Here.
All present.
Okay. Thank you. Item number 2, public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. The public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration. No action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Do we have some public comment this morning? Come forward.
I just want to check, make sure the microphone is on.
Hello, hello.
Red light.
Hi, my name is Ken Duncan, and I've been here before. On a day in which a preliminary budget is being presented to this board, some relief to ratepayers needs to be established within this upcoming budget. A board a few months ago had the opportunity to give some relief to water ratepayers, and it whiffed, only to just impose the next chapter, not impose the next chapter of the rate increase fiasco. The conditions now have changed enough that any water rate increase, which was possible then, now, would be difficult, what with the dictates coming down from the state relative to the continuing drought. However, this board has another opportunity to make some amends and do the right thing by providing some relief to those of us who were hit the very hardest by the overreach 2013 rate increase. It is time for relief for those of us who are unfortunate enough to be on CCWD's wastewater system. The 3 newest directors ran on a platform to bring relief to ratepayers, and it is time to make those promises a reality. Last note that you should be aware of, we do have a major problem with the golf course within our community. CCW rates, which makes it a lot more expensive to live within our community compared to being outside of it, have combined to reduce the real estate values to the extent that real estate brokers are now telling us that in order to sell a property at this time within our community, you essentially have to give it away. Relief from CCWD is needed now. Thank you.
We have further public comment?
Yes, ma'am, please. Thank you. Peter Race. I'm going to bring something to your attention that's been noticed by me. I made comments about it prior to it and the last board meeting also. And I don't want to have a negative reflection for the recipient. The young lady came in for the scholarship. I'm sure she was well deserved, well needed. Fine. and it was very nice, the board, to give that money to the young lady. But I'll tell you what noticed it, thank goodness to the TV camera and some other people with big mouth like me. Of the people sitting up here, about 9 or 10 people on this board. You know what, folks? I didn't see anybody reaching in their own pocket to help that young lady out. You were very generous out of your constituents' pocket. But it's also noticed that your good nature, your compassion, your generosity. I didn't see any of the board members or your staff reaching for their wallet, helping the young lady out. Just want you to know it's been noticed. Thank you.
Public comment?
Joe Kelly, I ask this, you may think it's out of order, but because you are part of the Highway 4 Water Committee. How is the Highway 4 Water Committee being informed on the Calaveras housing element? The housing element had triggered mechanisms, the housing element has triggering mechanisms in place after January 1st, 2009 for the updating of the conservation and safety element in Government Code 65302. The authority for and scope of general plans, 65300 to 65303.4, Article 5 added by Stats 1965, Chapter 1880. 65302A, parentheses A, a land use element, parentheses D, the land use element shall identify and annually review those areas covered by the plan that are subject to flooding identified by floodplain mapping prepared by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, or the Department of Water Resources. Calaveras County thinks its only obligation is to address Cosgrove Creek and San Antonio Creek as represented in the 1990 FEMA report to Calaveras County, and the signing up of Calaveras County to FEMA, the National Flood Insurance Plan, NFIP. CCWD, Calaveras County Water District, has authority given to it by water codes. An understanding of the authorities of Calaveras County and CCWD with an inclusive, quote, parentheses, comprehensive discussion to the general public taxpayers needs to be done. May I use the term immediately? Check out the California Legislative Information page, Title 7, Planning and Land Use, Section 6500 to 66499.5, Division 1, Planning and Zoning, 65000 to 66103, Chapter 3, Local Planning, 65100 to 65763. It is very informative as to the counties neglecting, no, ignoring their responsibilities by multiple boards of supervisors, planning directors, planning commission members. If I may include Caltrans and the COG, CCOG, Calaveras County Council of Government, with respect to the Wagon Trail project, one of the Caltrans last community meetings I brought to their attention of the flooding within Nassau Creek and the proposed new bridge crossing on Highway 4 in Nassau Creek. Subsequently, I invited engineers from Doken Engineering and Drake Hagelin to do a site visit. They had no clue as to the flooding issue in Nassau Creek watershed. The last I heard, there would not be an increase of volume of water, but could have an increase of velocity by their changing the bridge, the existing bridge there, and putting in a new bridge and new culvert system. Interesting tidbit. Tom Tryon, Gary Tofinelli, Russ Thomas, Steve Walensky had knowledge of flooding in February 2009 as the sitting members of the Calaveras County Board of Equalization. Callaway was absent. It was a public hearing. The interim assessor, county council, and the clerk of the board all had knowledge. Is the ignorance of boards of supervisors, including existing boards of supervisors, responsible for the legacy disadvantaged community, a term used in the general plan, expanding the concept to legacy disadvantaged county? Does the Highway 4 Water Committee have public comment on their agenda items? I was unable to attend the last one, but I felt that because of you folks being part of it, that this would be an appropriate place to put this, so you have knowledge of what's going on, and maybe start looking at your responsibilities and authorities in the respects of flooding which you do have responsibility for. Thank you.
I'm Mike Clapp from Valley Springs. I live on Dunn Road. And since we've changed our system that you guys pay the fire department to go out and drain our lines, I believe you pay them $700 a month. Well, you guys are always going repairing the roads and stuff where they drain the fire hydrants. When you drain the fire hydrant in front of my house, you break my lines. No, because they don't know how to turn the fire hydrants off properly, and they cause hammering on the lines. Not only do you break my lines, but you break your lines. So when I'm out fixing my lines, you send a crew out to fix the road lines. So it seems like they're coming on you to inform the people that drains the hydrants how to do it. Because sooner or later, I think you guys would get tired of fixing the line. Because I know you've been out there 4 times fixing it. I've replaced mine 3 times. And it happens within a day that they do it. And the reason I know it is because one of the gentlemen that rented the house from me that broke, he works for a big company that puts in water lines. So and it really galls me more than the broken lines is that we're on a drought and can't use the water. And since we're not using enough water, that you have to pay someone to drain the water. As my lawn's dying, you're turning a fire hydrant in front of my house and running it down the street. Now, that is just insanity. Thank you.
Further public comment? Oh, thank you, gentlemen. Oh, is that mine? Oh, okay. And what does that mean? Okay. We will now proceed to item number 3, the consent agenda. The following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial. Items will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that any item be removed for later discussion. Item 3A, the approval of minutes for the board meetings of May 13th, 22nd, and 27th, 2015. Ratifying the claim summary number 519 Secretarial Fund in the amount of $1,214,481.67 for May 2015. 3C, report on the write-off of uncollectible accounts receivable. Item 3D, resolution for support of nomination of General Manager Dave Egerton for Aqua Region 3 Board Member position.
I'll move for acceptance of the consent.
And what do I have to do? I have a motion to approve the
ability of anybody to pull an item.
Oh, well, okay. We've established a procedure so that if any of the audience members care to pull an item, they would discuss that with the board member prior to our meeting.
I'd like to pull 3B.
Item 3B.
Oh, my apologies, 3B. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I wanted to pull 3C, the write-off, report on the write-off of uncollectible accounts receivable. Yes, sir. Well, we are in consent agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And
you are, and you made a statement. And your statement goes to say that you've already set policies. But yet you don't state your policy in this. The Brown Act says if it's an agenda item, we have the right to speak on it without necessarily contacting any of you folks. So my thinking is you may need to change your policy and abide by the Brown Act. Thank you.
Madam President, since we're on the consent item, there wouldn't be public comment. If he has, a member of the public would have concerns, we'd certainly be happy to talk with him as staff offline about it.
And so you're asking is
There's
to,
a public hearing now that's going to have a vote on it, and we have the right to be able to interject ourselves. Ms. Underhill just put in that she's going to pull 3C, so I would like to speak on 3C, please. Thank you.
And that would be on the open calendar, so yes, certainly we'd have public comment on that. But anything related to the closed session, not the closed session, but the consent agenda itself is not subject to public comment.
all right. Then I am looking for approval for 3A and 3D, and Jeff made,
Yes, I'll make the motion, we approve 3A and 3D.
Second.
as amended. Okay, all those in favor? No? Excuse me.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, it's 3A, 3B, and 3D.
Well, they pulled 3B and 3C, so just 3A and 3D at this point.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we will now go to item 3B, ratifying the claim summary.
These are just a continuation to staff of questions that weren't answered previously.
Can we hear all right? No. Dennis, we can't.
This question is to staff as a continuation of those questions that we'd had, specifically a couple of items, and just to be sure that we've got them answered. Regarding Angel's sheet metal and the replacement units, did we find out whether those were two new units or whether those were replacement AC units? That's check number 120510.
Dennis, those are replacement AC units.
Those are replacements. Thank you. And then the other was looking for check detail on check number 120640, probably after the meeting.
Yes.
Would that be acceptable? And then also, the other one was number of connections served to 6 Mile Village. I was asking that question only to determine our cost, a cost-benefit analysis on 6 Mile.
And we are working on getting that information from the City of Angels.
Okay, so I'll hold that just as a question pending until we get an answer. That's all I have. Thank you.
Do I ask for a vote for the one and then go on to the other, or just take them?
Probably public comment.
Take them both?
Public.
I have a couple of comments
Oh,
to
okay.
it at some
Excuse
point.
me.
On check number, item number 120574, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the lake stream alteration permit is pretty typical price, but it talks about EP/WP park maintenance.
That's the Big Trees tank replacement project that is partially grant funded.
Oh, okay, so there's actually some stream impacts that will come out of replacing that tank.
It appears so.
Oh, okay. And I think the only other thing which I've talked about before is that on check number 120713 to DOS Environmental Services from Sunnyvale, is that, again, we have a policy 5.02.12 local preference program. I don't know if or it doesn't seem to me in comments I've made in the past talk about the idea of really trying to target local companies to do this kind of work. I don't know, the DOS is primarily a forestry consulting company. They do some wetlands and some other CEQA stuff, but it just strikes me as being that they're so far out of the area and yet they're doing work that a lot of local companies can do.
We can bring that up with staff.
Okay. Or if we have to revisit the policy of the local preference program.
And Director Strange, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, not having the list in front of me, but they may very well be on our list of on-call consultants that already have contracts that were awarded to them, because we have some that are not locals. So that would be something we need to think through how we would approach that. If we wanted to, I mean, typically we would just go to that list. We've got them under contract, and we wouldn't consider something like that if it's local or not. But if the board wanted to do that, even at that step, that's something we'd need to have some more conversation about.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to move that forward because, and also the idea of anything less than $100,000 that doesn't go out to competitive bid. Boy, that's a pretty big project.
I agree. I think there should be some revisiting of that in the future. Maybe establish a hierarchy for.
Yeah, and so if we can just kind of, put that on our things to do list, that'd be great.
A future agenda item,
Yeah, thank you.
because I know that was established a few years ago, and I'm not sure how recently it's been looked at again, so we might want to consider that.
Yeah, I mean, and they identify correctly. The purpose of it is to keep money local. And we really need to do our very best at doing that, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Okay,
If there's no further discussion, I'd move to approve 3B.
okay. Second? On
Second.
approval of 3B? Dennis moved to approve 3B. Scott seconded. Okay, item number 3C.
Wait, we got public comment and then vote on that.
Public comment.
And then we need to vote.
Public comment.
3B or 3C? 3B.
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 Claim summary. Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 3C, and this was a question for Pat. The uncollectible accounts was for the period of December 1st, 2014 through May 31st, 2015, and I had asked for figures from 2/13 to 2/14, December to May, and then 2012 to 2013. And my purpose in doing that was looking at how the write-offs have been affected by our rate increase.
In fiscal year 12-13, the actual bad debt write-offs was $70,255. And that was towards the end of the mortgage crisis and the developers that no longer were building. In fiscal year 13-14, the actual went down to $46,184. That's a drop of $24,000 from one year to the next. And this current fiscal year, 14-15, we are now at $47,000 through May.
I'm sorry, we're at,
47,000
okay, thank
through
you.
May of this year.
Okay, and of that, these are the uncollectibles?
These are the uncollectibles. These are where people sell their homes, and we have no way to collect the money from them. So we have to turn them over to our collection agency. And it's also the foreclosures. When people foreclose, we write off up to the bankruptcy acceptance date.
Okay. So 70 to 46 to 47.
Yes.
And there's one more month in this fiscal year,
There is.
so that the 47 could go up.
Yes, it'll go up.
Okay.
Patty, I'm trying to remember what we have budgeted for next year. I know it's in here.
Do you have that item?
I know it's in here. I saw it.
It's on its way.
I would say $55,000.
Is what we budgeted.
Probably budgeted the same amount, 55,000.
You did. It's here, 55.
Okay. Mr. Kelly, did you have a question on item?
Joe Keller. She answered some of it, but my base overall would be what and who is included in the uncollectible accounts? Meaning what kind of in your system is able to be written off as uncollectible, and who would be involved in that? Just the private sector of who you provide water or sewer to, or is there governmental agencies involved in this potential of uncollectible debts, or what? Thank you.
This amount is made up from the utility billing, and it's all our ratepayers.
Uh-huh.
That's it.
Okay, you got that? You're addressing 3C?
Yes, ma'am, I have a question. Being not a CPA, is there any way to separate what is for uncollectible for solid waste and for water? I mean, there's different, let's say, laws governing that money. Because some of these, like at almost $1,500, okay, you have means to minimize, or is that how much of it? Which one is a solid waste uncollectible, and which one is a water rate uncollectible? Because it's two different laws regulate those. If a ratepayer doesn't pay water, that's one law. And your obligation to service a solid waste, there's a different law regulates it. So it would be nice to see identified which one is what and where and why. You show the number, that's wonderful, okay? Especially someplace in Murphy's, that's some problem, but it's not your district, but as a taxpayer. I'm not just looking at it as a ratepayer, I'm also looking at it as a taxpayer and a ratepayer. So it would be nice to have a little bit more information on this. Thank you.
And Clyde, I'm one of your ratepayers that's not going to pay you. From me. I have 2 meters that you charge me water fees on that are not being used, they're locked off. You can,
Excuse me. Right now, we are talking about the uncollectibles.
I am uncollectible.
Is that what you
Yeah.
prefaced you were saying? Oh, so that you're on this list.
I don't know if I'm on the list, I should be. I have not paid you for over a year. So I don't know if I'm an uncollectible. I'm uncollectible. I owe you money. I have no intention of paying you. And so I was going to give you the perspective of an uncollectible to this. So I don't know if I'm on the list or not. I get duns from you all the time that I put in the trash can. So I would be addressing this issue that's before, the public comment part. And part of the problems on your uncollectibles is you expect people to pay for water that you're not providing for them. My meters are locked off. I have no intentions of using them. There is no home there. You send me a bill as there is a house there. I pay the same thing for a lot with no house that I do from the water in my own home that I live at. I use the water. And the fairness, which I know this has nothing to do with fairness or anything else, but on contractual agreements that you probably the council could tell you, a binding contract that has to have both parties' interest in mind. You have no interest in mine at all. You just collect a fee from me that you provide no service for. And to me, it is the same thing as breaking my water lines and not compensating me for it. And I wish that you would address that with your maintenance people on, doing that with the fire department and quit breaking our lines. But that's part of the problem, because I have no intention of paying for water I do not use. I have other lots without meters that I do not get billed for, but I'm still in your district and you still have to provide water for me at the time I put the house on. So I don't understand that concept. I mean, I had my attorney address to your people to send instructions to them on your policies and stuff, which he's never received from you. And it was Mr. Fuller. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if we have...
We're in the middle of doing some revisions to those policies right now anyway, aren't we?
Yes, Director Mills, on the rules and regs governing water, wastewater service, which includes all of this kind of stuff, it is, those are being updated right now.
I just wanted to bring that to the record so that everybody understood. We're not neglecting trying to fix this if that's what needs to be fixed.
True, and that's very, very true. That's all something that's given a fresh look, and I think it's it's not something that most people would know, because I mean a lot of the infrastructure is underground, and you wouldn't. But we have to account for those costs of a system that we had to build and operate and maintain. That's there, whether the water is flowing through it or not. We have to have the ability to have the capacity to serve those customers that are within the system. And so it's a challenge. I totally understand. This is one of the really sensitive issues in the public. And so going through the rules and regs update, I think, is an important way for us to really have a chance to have a full discussion on that and hopefully gain some public understanding.
Thank you. Yes. No. And
Move for acceptance on 3C.
we have
Second.
3C.
Oh, no vote. Oh, okay. What?
No vote? Oh, okay. So we go back to 3B.
No, 3B's already been voted
Okay.
on.
Then we're through.
4.
She said for information only. Okay.
That's why it says report.
Correct.
They keep us on track, Mona.
So Mona, we've covered consent
There,
agenda.
rescind my motion.
Cool.
Okay, thank you.
Give her a cat prod, keep it going.
Smooth operator.
Right. Item number 4, public hearing. 4A, discussion action regarding adopting ordinance with changes to the Board of Directors compensation and travel reimbursement policy 4030. Dave Eggerton.
Madam President, members of the board, Madam President, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and to recognize we're opening the public hearing on this ordinance. And I'll give the update, and then we'll let the public weigh in if they have any comments they'd like to make.
Okay. Public hearing is open.
Thank you. And Madam President, this is just a continuation of an item that's been before the board several iterations over the last spring. And because the action that we're proposing to be taken here today requires an ordinance, then we had to agendize this as consideration of an ordinance to make an amendment to the existing board compensation and reimbursement policy and go through this additional step. You'll see that everything that we have here, the proposed amendments, are exactly what was presented to the board several meetings ago, the direction that we received. And that basically was a couple of changes to the existing policy. One, to reduce the amount of compensation per meeting from $135 per meeting to $120 per meeting. 2, to eliminate the automatic annual increase of the, as of every year right now, it's an automatic increase. As of July 1, I believe that's a $5 increase, is that correct? And so you would, had you not if we're not to make this change, the amount of compensation per meeting would go up to $140 per meeting as of July 1. As well, there's also an update to the list of organizations and associations that are deemed to be compensable and provided for reimbursement should a director attend those meetings. But I want to be clear in that list, it was not intended, neither originally or as proposed now, to be the all-encompassing list of everything that the director might go to on behalf of the district. It's more an illustrative list of the kind of things that, just like going to a meeting with the county Board of Supervisors on an issue of concern to the district. Clearly, that's one that, is commonly one that would be, would be provided for, as well as JPA that the board is a member of. Certainly, that's pretty clear. And as well as to provide that, if there are other meetings that have a water-related subject of interest to the district, then that certainly would be something that could be provided for as well, even if it's not on this list. And so that, really nothing else to report. Again, there's nothing new here from what was presented before. The only thing I guess to note is that if the board does adopt this ordinance today, it will take 60 days to go into effect. So you may see that on the reimbursement, compensation for meetings in particular, you would see that won't actually change until 60 days. And just to note, we have accounted for this within the budget for the draft budget for next year. You'll see that, and there is some cost savings associated with this. So I thank the board for bringing this forward, Director Mills. We also tried to use those comments plus looking at comparisons of other agencies in the region, and that's where we landed today with this, what's being proposed.
Do we need a motion before the public
Yes.
comment?
I think you should go ahead and do public comment as part of the public hearing, and then you can include that and take action.
Okay. I'm looking for public comment.
Not that you all and every one of you are great people and with a great mind, integrity and honesty and openness. But you know the bottom line is in a private business, you don't get paid for your intentions. You get paid for your results. And the general manager can sugarcoat it all he wants. But you probably got the hint that as this organization, for many years now, is not exactly on top of a symbol of efficiency and responsiveness and accountability. And it's not just what you get compensated for showing up here, and sometimes it gets very obvious, even on TV, how much you're enjoying being here. You can't wait to get your body out of here. And the question is, it's sometimes good to look at how prepared you are when you come up here. Do you really think that your constituents believe that you earned what you're reading? You really think if you go back to your constituents, look, what a great job I did. I went to this and this conference. When was the last time any one of you brought back a written report? The general manager did. It must be important, and maybe it's for a good cause. But you better earn what you're getting, that you feel that you deserve. Now, I have a simple solution. Next time you send your bill out, put on a bottom. Should my representative deserve a raise or maintenance of their compensation now? Simple. Send it out to the ratepayers. Do you think you deserve what you're getting? Have you earned it? I'm not making myself popular if I look at some of the folks' face. But somebody's got to do it, folks. If you earn the money and the district benefited from it, to the plus, you're an asset, not a liability. Great. I don't care how much you make. But if all you are is a cost, a liability, forget it. Thank you.
I think he was complimenting us on reducing that rate, from what I understand.
Oh, I can make myself
Okay,
clear.
let's, it's Mr. Kelly's turn.
Well, I can step back and let Peter come back. But, Joe Kelly, what is the quantity of meetings that you folks attend per month, a high and low? And does your compensation include medical, retirement, vacation, etc.? Thank you. So I preface this with, on that, of the quantity issue is because at past times I've gotten the impression you only attend this meeting and get paid for it, and that it's a real struggle for some to participate as board members in this organization. So I just want to see what kind of monies by quantity of meetings gone to by you folks individually or collectively collect. Thank you.
Further public comment? See?
Madam President, I think that Mr. Kelly touched on one important note that I did forget to mention. One of the changes in addition is to reduce the number of compensable meetings from 7 to 6. And something the board had talked about last time was potentially taking the expense reimbursement submittal forms that are provided by board members and providing that with the agenda materials. We could, put that part of the official record, either that or some other form that provides that information. I'd like to follow up with you, Madam President, on that and do that if that's the desire of the board to do that. Certainly, those are public documents already, but if you feel that it would be helpful to provide that. I personally have been, seeing how engaged the board's been, and that's one way. There's certainly many other meetings you go to that you don't provide, you don't even submit for, but that's one piece of that picture.
Rest of the board?
Yeah, as soon as it's our turn.
Pardon?
Just let me know when it's my turn. It's still public comment. You're still in public.
Then we're through with the public comment. Public hearing is over. Adjourned, I should say. Now we'll go back to...
Would you like a motion? I would like to make a motion that we adopt these changes to our compensation policy.
I would second that motion.
Okay, and the motion reads, adopt CCWD Ordinance 2015-2, amending Board Policy Number 430-1, reduce the amount of compensation for authorized meetings from the current amount of $135 per meeting to $120. Item 2, eliminate the automatic annual increase of 5% to the amount of compensation for authorized meetings. 3, reduce the total number of authorized meetings an individual board member may be compensated for attending each month from 7 to 6, and update the list of authorized meetings and events under policy 4030.25 that are eligible for board member compensation and expense reimbursement. Board comment?
I have one. I want to discuss what Dave was just talking about in regards to having our, I think it shows much better accountability, and we've done it in the past where the meetings that directors sought compensation for were listed in our agenda, just for information purposes. And so I'd like to see us go back and do that policy again. And I don't think it was that big of a deal to generate. And I'll let staff figure out how best to do it, but because you don't always know where somebody meant. I may want to find out what you guys learned at one of these things. I don't necessarily need a report on all of them, but certainly if there's something that I think is interesting in there, I can at least have that conversation with you. So,
Dave, is that something we'd need as an amendment to this or an addition? Or
no, the direction is fine. And we'll go back and what was done in the past is the past format for this document, as well as what we have right now, and the way of the existing form, and we'll include that with the next agenda.
Excellent.
I might suggest that it just be part of our consent agenda, like our expense summary. Just one additional item that appears as our financial packet for each meeting.
Jerry?
Yeah, sounds good.
I would just like to address the items that we've changed on as far as the director compensation. This was an issue that was discussed when we were running. We were talking about the amount of compensation that the directors benefited were reimbursed or were paid or whatever, compensated. And it was very important to us. And so we went in and made an analysis, and this wasn't just, putting something together. We did look at other districts. We did look at compensation, other packages, and so a lot of thought was put into what we came up with, and we're satisfied with what we've done. And so,
Madam President, I thought your question to me was one of the follow-up of adding our timesheets or in with the agenda.
Yes.
I would like to make, yes, a quick comment on the fact that we did, as part of our platform, commit to, as well as the public has asked us to consider reducing our compensation, and we've done that, and I think that the board should be recognized for that, as well as I'm hoping the public also recognizes that and appreciates it, because that reflects, I think, on the board in a big way. So, thank you.
any other comment? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You want a roll call? I was looking at her going, okay.
I said that and then I forgot. Okay.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Rowdy?
Yes.
Director Mills?
Yes.
Director Strange?
Yes.
And President
Yes. 5-0. On to new business. 5A, discussion action confirming the eligible benefits for the CCWD Board of Directors. Stacy Lawler.
Morning. The agenda item that is before you is to reaffirm the benefits of the Board of Directors. The only indication of a reference, rather, of benefits for the Board of Directors that the district has is a 1979 minute entry that indicates that Board of Directors will be eligible for all benefits provided to employees. And that has not been the practice for several years. They don't receive all benefits. For instance, Board of Directors don't receive retirement benefits, disability benefits, and so forth. So in your packet today, you'll see it does, there's a benefit summary of the Board of Directors. Benefits, which includes PERS, or medical care through PERS, dental coverage, vision coverage, life insurance at a $10,000 flat policy, medical out-of-pocket. Those are the 5 benefits that are afforded to the Board of Directors.
So do you just need a motion for this?
Yes.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution to reaffirm eligible benefits for the Board of Directors of Calvert County Water District.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Then I open it up for discussion.
Joe Kelly, the particular thing that caught my ear was CalPERS. Are you folks preparing for 2020, when CalPERS, everything they're going to do goes up by a minimum of 50%? So I suggest you start looking forward to that and having your staff review and see what's going to need to be done, or project out how you're going to be able to pay for that within your budget without harming the ratepayers by arbitrary inflationary cost of water, service, and utility. Thank you.
I don't make friends and influence people. Open my mouth, right? I can understand why the directors want insurance and so on. But I noticed that independents, you get a fixed amount. But you do prefer benefits for a full-time, as a full-time employee. Now, if that's the case, if you're a full-time employee, then the 40 hours a week when you're traveling, why should you get additional compensation for it, folks? You're either getting a full-time benefit, produce full-time work. You shouldn't get compensated additionally. I mean, it's nice that you pay 15% for whatever benefit you're getting. But all these folks over here and out in TV land, does that mean they gotta pay 85% for your benefits? For a part-time job? Think about it that way. And I'm talking from as a taxpayer and ratepayer. And yeah, I come across as a cheap screw, fine. But the principle behind it, you want full-time benefits, but you're not putting in a full-time work. Thank you.
Excuse me?
Coming back up, but something went through my little pea brain here. Your eligible benefits, meaning the medical side of it or anything else, does it cover family also?
Yes.
We have,
Thank you.
yes. Right.
Well, I just want to say in regards to this, you know, we've done reviews on this sort of thing periodically, but in the most recent one, the similar agencies have a much richer stipend, and they also have very, very similar medical benefits. There's nothing going on here out of the normal. The fact that we continue to go backwards on this, I think, is the right way to go. But there's certainly nothing in this package that isn't similar to El Dorado or any of the other similar agencies like us. You know, I think that there was years ago, and there's still a few directors that have this benefit, but they had lifetime medical benefits. That was something that was taken away years ago. It was not that many years ago where directors were allowed to be reimbursed for 10 meetings a year, a month. We reduced that down to 7, and we just reduced it again down to 6. So I think we're being responsible here. But you know, quite honestly, I couldn't afford to do this job if it wasn't for the benefit package. I wouldn't be able to justify it to my family, the time that we put in. So that's just my point of view on the matter.
I just want to note that this package was approved back in April of 1979, so it's not a new one, and believe me, it's been looked at by our ratepayers. Well, you know, if you want. And they look and they relook, and they examine everything we're doing. And we talked about transparency, and, you know, part of this will be the fact that our timesheet will now be part of the board packet. So we'll hear it. Believe me, we'll hear it. And Dennis?
Yeah, Madam President, I have only a comment in that I remember a discussion with a former Calaveras County supervisor when I was running, and she said, if we take away too much of these types of benefits, you're going to eliminate a lot of potential great candidates from running for office simply because it's going to take away from their ability to support their families and be able to provide the kind of representation that they need. And it was a grave concern on her part. I kind of echo that. I want to go on record. I'm not taking any of these benefits, and that's my choice to not do that. But there are people out there in the working world yet, which I'm not part of, that really need to have this type of compensation to be able to afford to sit on a board of this type. And yes, there's a lot of time and effort that's put on each one of the members here, and I see this as a very engaged board from what I've known of past boards. So I think it's not a negative to have this compensation available to those people that choose to take it.
Public comment is over, I believe.
Has been closed.
Can we close
Okay.
public comment then?
Okay, yes, we did.
Yeah.
Okay, and now Mona will call for the vote.
Director Strange?
Yes.
Director Mills?
Yes.
Director Radaman?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
And Director Underhill?
Yes. Item 5B, resolution reaffirming board support of hiring general manager.
I move to table the item, Madam President. I feel that it's out of order based upon the need for us to be in closed session later this afternoon. I'd like to see this brought back at a future meeting when all of the members are present, after we've had a chance to do that discussion with our general manager. I just see it as being out of order to the whole scheme.
I don't know, how does the rest of the board feel?
I'm ready to vote on it and approve it. I think it's more of a statement of more of a blanket or general statement of support rather than really focused on any one particular performance or other things. So that's my opinion.
I have no need to table it.
You don't? No.
He stepped out.
And, yeah, well, he had to leave. And we have a quorum here, and so I choose to go forward with it.
Madam President, maybe I can give my perspective. I see this really as confirmation of the hiring process itself. Really, it's not really about, ongoing performance evaluations and that kind of. I mean, all of that stands alone. So I'm just from my perspective, it was just to clarify that issue about hiring, because I know the process was somewhat contentious.
Okay.
And appreciate
and
it.
that, and that's exactly what I was going to say. The Calaveras County Water District Board policy states that the president of the board shall serve as chairperson at all meetings, and as chairperson, I feel extremely privileged to be able to bring this item forward. We went through some very contentious times when we were all running, and Dave was hired, and we've worked with Dave now for 6 months, well, actually 7 months, and I just, this is a resolution asking for the board, or asserting the board support for the general manager, Dave Egerton. Whereas some board of directors of the Calaveras County Water District, CCWD, took office immediately after the current general manager was hired by the previous board of directors, and whereas against the wishes of candidates running for the office of the board of directors of Calaveras County Water District, the previous board of directors recruited and hired the current general manager prior to the 2014 CCWD election, and whereas some of the current board of directors have expressed concerns over the hiring of a new general manager prior to the seating of the new CCWD Board of Directors. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Calaveras County Water District Board of Directors hereby fully supports the hiring of General Manager Dave Egerton for the position of General Manager. Be it further resolved that the Calaveras County Water District Board of Directors hereby pledges to provide support, guidance, and direction to Dave Egerton in his capacity as the general manager of the Calaveras County Water District.
So moved.
Do I have?
I have a second. Yeah, I have a second.
I'd just like to talk a little bit about this also. I think that, it might not even seem like this is necessary to the public, but when the three board members, the new board members came on, there was a lot of rhetoric, and it continued for quite a while about the former board doing its duty, which was to hire a general manager. We went through that process with the old board. It was a thorough process. I think we're very fortunate to be able to put Dave on, and it was very difficult to have the rhetoric going on the outside when we were diligently working, and we knew things that the new board didn't know yet because they hadn't been seated. They didn't know about certain personnel issues that we had and such. And I think we're really lucky to get Dave on. And I'm thankful that the rest of the board, or at least we'll see here, I guess. But I think that it's helpful to have the board offer its support, and so we can get this district moving forward. And this is just a way to recognize that we're going to do that. So I would hope that we will pass this based on that.
Thank you, Director Davidson.
No, and I agree with a lot of what Jeff is talking about. In some ways, I'm a little apologetic that it's taken this long, to be honest with you. But yet, as a new board member, as a new public official, there's a lot of things that I'm just naive about. But no, I based upon my experience working with Dave to date and seeing his background and just the respect that he has in the water world, I think we're very lucky to have Dave as our general manager.
The one thing that really is quite clear is that he's maintaining a positive attitude despite some of the very awkward situations. And, you know, coming from a business background where you have a hierarchy that everything flows downhill, it doesn't flow downhill for you from one person, it flows downhill from 5. And each one of us have a unique personality and a unique drive, which sometimes makes things difficult to try to figure out what is the perspective going on here. So that takes quite a unique individual to be able to sort all that out, which you've done a very good job of so far. So I appreciate the effort of trying to make this all blend together and make it work for the benefit of the ratepayers and the taxpayers of Calaveras County.
I might add that we never, had any bad impressions of Dave. As a matter of fact, I met Dave years ago in my first round with CCWD, and while we didn't work closely, I knew him. But what we objected to was the process. That was the entire thing. We were thinking to ourselves, why does the old board think that they know more than us? And in
the end, we were right. So let's just get that out of the bag right now.
Well, no, we don't quite mean it that way.
You finally got it right, huh?
It was a learning process.
For you guys, I agree.
Oh, I see. Let's take a vote on that.
And I'm just and I want to acknowledge Director Strange for starting the process of our coming up with this resolution, and I'm very happy with it, and I'm very pleased, and Dave is there. He answers calls, which is just part of his job. He answers the calls.
And responds to emails.
And responds to emails and is there for every concern that we have, every question that we have, and I have no problems at all. And do I open this for public?
I enjoy this Love Fest, folks. It's so nice and touching, but sometimes you're missing the point. The way it was done, it was not fair to that gentleman, and it definitely was not done to you folks. That's the problem. And for you to say, well, his second coming, maybe he is. Maybe he's going to walk on water. Did you have an opportunity to see what else is available out there? You got the try. Maybe he's the perfect person, but you did not do justice to him because he's been in limbo, like it or not. And the process was faulty, very, very faulty. You do have intelligence. You have ideology. Am I going to agree with all of it? But the way that was done was wrong. And as far as I'm concerned, I still proceed. I put a claim with the district attorney. I'm still proceeding against the way it was handled with the grand jury. And I do have a problem. I don't know who guided this thing, but I do have a problem, and I got a claim against the State Bar Association. That old board had guidance. And the way took shortcuts, let's say. And I'm not a judge, and I'll leave it up to the other people. But the way it was proceeded was the problem. And it's no reflection on Dave. He's a victim in it, just like these folks are a victim in it. Some people get a God complex after a while. And they decide what is good for the rest of the new board. That's what's the problem. Thank you.
Joe Kelly, the one word caught my attention, the term rhetoric on the outside. Well, if it wasn't for the rhetoric spewing ratepayers' ability to pay, you wouldn't be here. And this is what is bothersome to me, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to present it in the last issue. But you folks really need to start looking, not so much as just that which you do in your ratcheting up and surrounding agencies and everything else, but you need to look at the concept of the ratepayers' ability to pay.
Excuse me.
And I have no problem with Mr. Egerton there, and I understand what the issue is. Hired by a past board, they did the same thing, did not look at the ratepayers' ability to pay. That has nothing to do with Mr. Egerton, really, in the overall. But I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, taking what the past board, putting him in, causing a problem, saying you folks don't know you're from a hole in the ground, and now you've told him, yes, we do. And if he's working out good, I would hope that you all are going to stand behind him. If he works out bad, I hope you're going to give him the boot, because the people of Calaveras County can't continue to afford all this nonsense that goes on, whether it be here in CCWD or Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Further public comment? Seeing none, call for the vote.
Yes, Director Strange.
Yes.
Director Mills.
Yes.
Director Davidson.
Yes.
And President Underhill.
Yes.
One absent.
Do you want to take a break?
Please.
Yeah, take a break. 7 minutes.
7 minutes. 7.5 minutes.
Presents to the board the preliminary fiscal year 2015-16 operating and CIP budgets. For those in the public, there is a handout out on the front table of the PowerPoint presentation. Also in the board packet was a printing of the preliminary budgets for individuals to see, and this was part of your board package. It's also on our website. Before I get started, I do want to thank Patty Christensen, our accountant, who did 98% of the work on this budget in my absence. And I apologize for my absence. I'll be here for today.
You don't have to apologize, Jeff, really.
I will be here today to present the preliminary, and I'll be back at the board meeting on the 24th for the adoption of the board meeting. And I am available for questions and comments in the interim. So please feel free. The budget process was started back in January when we discussed the mid-year budget. The conversations were ongoing when we discussed the capital R&R program. And during my absence, Patty continued that discussion with the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee has met and reviewed these preliminary draft budgets, and now it's culminated into this preliminary budget. There were a few changes from the last time the Finance Committee saw this budget, and they were highlighted in the staff report, and I'll go over those. But what I'd like to do again is put the credit where credit's due. Patty did a phenomenal job stepping in.
I just want to say, Madam President, members of the board as well, I echo the same sentiment. Patty has been fantastic to work with, and it's been a great opportunity to get to know her a little better, and her wicked sense of humor. And I tell you, it's great to have Jeff available as he is, and I can't thank him enough for participating in this as we complete this budget process. I'm buying time for Jeff as he comes back. All right.
So as we get moving along this budget process, this is going to be, I hope, not very long, but very dry. And I encourage questions, but I would like to go through this presentation first, and then if you can hold some questions for public comments or such toward the end, we can delve through this and then we can go back and look at the particulars. If individual board members have questions, if you think that it's real pertinent to ask it at that point, feel free, but I'd like to kind of move this thing along, if that's okay with Madam President. Okay, the item before you, as you see, is the fiscal year 2015-16 operating and CIP budgets. We're first going to talk about the operating budget. And that is basically our bread and butter. It takes care of our day-to-day operations. There's salaries and benefits, services and supplies, some small capital outlay, purchases of equipment and projects, and it's funded by our rate revenues, property taxes, hydro revenues, and miscellaneous revenues, and I'll get to those in just a moment. But this, again, is our day-to-day operations. It's a challenge, the challenge being the drought. This is the second year where are going to feel the dramatic reduction in our water revenues because of people using less water. And part of our part of our rate structure for water is you have your base rate and your consumptive rate. When people use less water, your consumptive revenues go down. The base rate stays the same. So therefore, we have been challenged over the last several years. Last year, we reduced the budget by nearly $360,000, 25% on the consumptive side. We're doing again this year because we are anticipating lower water consumptive revenues. Now, when I'm talking about revenues, please note that on the operating budget, you're only looking at the pre-2012, or 13 rate increase. Everything above that, the last rate increase, all those go into R&R. So remember, in this 5-year rate plan that the board has adopted, the previous board, there are no additional funds for the operating budget. So we have to work within that tight framework of no additional revenues. And that makes it challenging. But the staff, the department heads have worked together with the finance committee and Dave, the general manager, and Patty to look at these things, to find some ways to save money, yet get us moving back into a position of being able to fund the district at staffing levels that are necessary to do the work. So in looking at revenues, we have them on both screens, okay. Operating revenues. Operating revenues, if you look at page 2 of your handout, and it's operating revenues through here. The operating revenues are the top half of that sheet. And basically it's water and wastewater rate revenues, and then it's operating revenues for things like fees under count establishment fees, install water meters, inspection fees, backflow certification. We also include wholesale irrigation hydrant sales and developer reimbursements and a catch-all under other. Those revenues we project are going to be down $350,000 or $351,000, or approximately 2.9%. Basically, we're reducing our consumptive revenues again due to the drought and the continued effects of mandatory conservation. Plus, we reduced our water meter install revenues by $60,000 from last year because that's the cost associated, that's the revenue we received from the Flying Acres Assessment District that went to the operating fund last year. And since that assessment district water project is complete, we'll not be getting those revenues anymore. It was a one-time shot in the arm. And that's when our staff went in and installed water meters, and those, since the district paid for those in their staff time, we got reimbursed. The operating fund got reimbursed. So you see that operating revenues are going to be down. We also have what we call non-operating revenues. This is the lower half, the middle half, I should say, part of this sheet. We have standby fees, property taxes, investment income. Things are not related to the day-to-day operations of going out and providing their services. We have power sales from the North Fork and New Hogan and other miscellaneous revenues. These are going to actually be increased. We project an increase of $252,000. Most of this increase is associated with property tax revenues. Property tax revenues in fiscal year 14-15 are going to be about 11% higher than what we anticipated from the prior year. There's growth coming back in the county. And so property tax revenues are increasing, and that means our proportional share is increasing, and then we also anticipate a growth into next year. So that's helping to offset the lower water revenues. And part of that property tax, remember, we take 85% of that to fund the operating budget, and then the other goes into our special projects fund that is in Fund 108. That money has been set aside by prior board policy. We are going to see a little bump in our North Fork revenues, but we anticipate a decrease in our Hogan revenues. The reason for that is the North Fork revenues are not tied to power generation. The agreement between NCPA and CCWD ties it to an incremental increase on a construction cost index that's in place and adjusted quarterly. So it's based on a number issued by the federal government for the Western U.S. for a construction cost index. So it's increased incrementally. So we don't anticipate any decrease in NCPA, whereas in Hogan, it's based on power generation. So that's why we see a slight increase in NCP in North Fork and a decrease in New Hogan. Any questions so far?
There seems to be some discrepancies between what was in the Finance Committee report and what I'm seeing now.
As far as?
For instance, investment income, you're showing $32,500 in proposed. We saw 25 in the Finance Committee. So there's a reason for the change?
Yes, I had an opportunity to review them. Patty and I sat down and we looked at our current year-end projections of investment revenues, also taking into account that investments are yields are going up. 10-year treasuries are now at 2.44%, whereas last year they were below 2%. So we're going to be seeing some increase, slight increase. So basically what I'm doing at this point is Patty and I sat down, we projected what we're going to get this year and basically left it as is.
The other question is on backflow certification. Are we still doing backflow certification?
Utilities works through that. Yes, they do. Utilities department contract. I believe they contract out.
If they contract out, then the district is billed for the service, and the district turns around and bills the ratepayer.
Okay.
So it's a wash. It's an in and out. Yeah. Otherwise, the district staff will do it, and we'll still get the cost back from the ratepayer.
Thank you. Only one more question. It has to do with wastewater. I see an increase of 0.5% in the revenue for the period. Are we looking? Yeah, are we looking at new connections coming online?
We've actually been experiencing new connections, and that equates to maybe 12 new connections.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question, Jeff. In relationship to, we have the capital outlay where we're buying equipment, the $75,000 for replacement trucks, the new the mini excavator to replace a backhoe, and yet where I see sale of surplus equipment, I see a budget of zero. I assume that the backhoe is going to be sold, it's replaced, and also the half-ton pickup, and is that somewhere else in here?
Since I don't have an actual number that I can put my hands on, I chose not to put a dollar amount in there. However, it is our policy and our practice to surplus equipment. In this particular instance, when I'm talking a couple $1,000s, it's not material enough to put a guess in there. I'm trying to work on solid information. But you are correct, Director Strange, we will be surplusing equipment as they become available.
Okay, so it's likely, I see year to date has been zero, but you have a $2,000 budget in the future, and yeah, we'll just play it by ear.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
I understand, all right.
And Director Strange, there's actually a couple of vehicles that we're looking to surplus now as part of for this current fiscal year, as part of some of the new fleet that are going to be purchased. And I think the amount we would get per truck as a pickup is like $1,500 a truck. So that's in the ballpark, I think, of what you've got here.
It is, and in some cases, like other equipment, it's all, some of these backhoes, we repair them, we run them, and it may just be put off to the side in case there's a breakdown, but we run them to death.
Yeah.
I mean, they get their useful life and then some.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a chance that, for instance, a backhoe may not be sold, it may be kind of stored for
emergencies.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I know in that particular case, it required quite a bit of repairs to get it moving along and working. And in time, I'd say over the last year, the Utilities Department has found that mini excavators are much more usable, especially in tight quarters, than the backhoes are, and they've been much more productive. And that's why they're looking towards some of this, because this is what they also do out to do repairs in the collections and distribution system.
Okay, that was just my question, is looking at a $2,000 number and thinking even a poor quality backhoe might be worth 4 or 5, who knows?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Any additional revenues above budget, we take.
Thank you.
Any other questions? These basically cover the operating and non-operating revenues. The next thing we have are what we call transfers in. This is not technically a revenue because it's not generated within that current year per se, but it is something we use that comes from other funds, expansion, CIP, capital project water and sewer funds, and capital R&R funds, to move and cover expenses in the operating budget pertaining to those expenses. A lot of this is related to our debt service. Many years ago, we created a debt to pay for improvements in Ebbets Pass water, Jenny Lynn water, Copper Cove water, and Copper Cove sewer. And we issued bonds. We refinanced it recently to issue a loan. That particular original bond financed improvements to our operating system. Remember back in capacity fees and expansion funds can only cover costs associated with expanding the existing system. However, when we do these projects, part of the project may include some operational replacements. So what we've done is we have the debt service for this particular loan in the operating budget. About 33% of the debt service is related to the operating budget. The rest of it comes from those 4 expansion funds. So what we do is we take funds in those expansion funds, move them over to the operating budget to pay debt service. Debt service on these loans is basically twice a year. September 1, principal and interest. February is generally interest only on most of these loans. So in this particular case, with the BBVA loan, and that's the very first one you see, we're moving $838,000 from 3 expansion funds to fund their portion of the debt service. That's Ebbets Pass water, Copper Cove water, and Copper Cove sewer. The Jenny Lynn water portion of the debt, there generally is not enough money in the Jenny Lynn water expansion fund, so there's just not enough connections, and we've been backfilling this with property tax or special project fund money. So what we're doing for that, and we budgeted the worst case scenario, is the debt service related to the Jenny Lynn water expansion fund, which is $380,000. We're budgeting that as a transfer from Fund 108, our interest reserve fund, at a property tax money to pay for that. If there are connections during the year, it can reduce that amount. But we do not have enough money at this time in Jenny Lynn expansion fund to pay for its full debt service. Now that debt will be repaid in time in the future as we get more and more connections in that area. And just as a side note, This loan goes through September 1 of 2017, so we're getting close to the end of it. The next item that we have here is, I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth. My apologies, because I'm looking here at the sheet here. The first is the capital R&R debt service, the R&R funds. We have our R&R loan that we have to pay debt service, and that comes from the water and wastewater R&R funds, and that comes to the tune of $409,000 plus change. Again, the debt is recorded in the operating budget for transparency. We want to show everybody what our loans are, and this is the cost associated to servicing that debt. We also, and for those that are in the public, I'm down at the bottom half of this slide. We also bring in $75,000 from the 108 Interest Reserve Fund of unallocated interest to pay for this building, the building loan, and that's interest only. And it'll continue interest only through 2016-17, and then once we relieve the operating fund of its obligation on the BBVA loan, those funds are then going to be used to pay down the debt of this building and repay the internal funds that we borrowed it from. Now, jumping up to the top of it, water rights expenses. As you're aware, we've had to incur some significant costs associated with protecting our rights and our permitting of our existing rights, so re-permitting and such. These costs are included in the water resource budget and also in the general management budget for not only the legal fees, but the costs associated with providing the information to those legal experts. Because we use a number of experts in the area of modeling, hydrology, and such that are required to produce produce the information that has to go to the state to back up our permits and our protection of our water rights. So that we're bringing that money in from the Interest Reserve Fund. A number of years ago, the board established a water rights reserve of approximately $3 million. And we're going to have to draw from that to help cover these costs.
And I think that we had talked about some water rights education, at the board level and all too. And so I guess my comment with that is that enough? Based upon our direction, I know at least in the McCollum, I'd really like to see some effort to, strengthen our knowledge and ability to transfer if we're going to stay on target for possibly 2016, some of that water transfer stuff. Are you comfortable then with this number?
I am, given the information we have now. I mean, this is one of the tough areas, I think, for me personally to budget for, because I could see, having a larger budget, given the importance of it, but I think we really need to, be focused and targeted on what we try to accomplish this year. We've got some extremely important deadlines coming up that we need to be prepared for. But certainly we're not. I just don't think we're going to be able to take on the entirety of things that we could be working on. I think we've got to be measured in the way we approach it. I think this is, but I think what we need to do be more targeted and effective in what we're spending our money on, and prepare to continue to make the expenditures in the coming years. And so I think in part what we'll discuss on the 24th of July when we do have that workshop on water rights will help identify some of those key issues that we are targeting this year under this budget. But yeah, I mean, a lot of this would be for legal fees, and certainly it could get expensive quickly. And some of it is reacting to what the state requires of us. I mean, we may be in a position where we have to do more than we expected. How it is responding to regulatory community. But as of right now, I think this is adequate.
Okay, thanks.
And just to follow up on that, if there is something unexpected that comes down upon us and requires action, your board does have the ability to adjust and modify the budget. And it can do so, and we just pull more money out of the reserves. But as Dave said, this is a very measured approach, and I can't budget on what I think may happen coming from the state. We have to look at what our resources are. But we are very conscious of what could be out there. That's what makes this process, the budget process, fluid. Yes, ma'am.
What does Fund 108 look like?
Fund 108, that is our interest reserve fund. It includes an emergency 90-day operating reserve
Right, I
of $4
remember
million, the reserve for water rights, $3 million, cash flow for CIPs, because a lot of times when you have CIPs, especially grant-funded CIPs, you're paid in arrears. You need cash flow for that. That's $1.5 million. A reserve for special projects. This is the property tax money. And this is what Patty did for projecting year-end as of June 30th. About $1.5 million. A rate stabilization reserve of a little over $700,000, and some unallocated investment income of about $500,000. The year-end projection is about $11.2 million in reserves, which is a decent reserve, and it helps us as we go forward in looking for any loans, or it meets our loan requirements, our debt coverage ratios, but as someone in charge of the fiduciary state of the district, I always like to see healthy reserves. Fortunately for us, we have them, and in this case, we can draw down some of them for the water rights.
Okay, so when you borrowed $3 million to build this building, this came out of?
No, it did not. It came out of some of the expansion funds, for which we, at that time, which staff at that time projected there will be no significant needs in those particular expansion funds for any construction at that time, because obviously we were in a recession and such, and we still don't anticipate any drawdowns on those. But once they're paid back, those funds still will be available for future expansion projects.
And how much money do we have in there?
I don't have that off the top of my head. I'd have to go back and check which individual expansion funds were used to provide the funding for the admin building.
Okay. And it was a couple of minutes ago, you were talking about connections in Jenny Lind.
Correct.
You've been talking about that for several years now. We have not seen any connections.
Come on, Jeff.
But one day we will.
They got out of the business.
I look at this district being here in perpetuity. I know it's going to take a number of years to pay it down.
Yeah.
There is an obligation, but we also have the debt obligation. We have to pay for it somehow. And that's why we look at the special project fund, to pull revenues out of that to pay for the obligation. So Patty is keeping a ledger of the amount due to the special project fund from the Jenny Lind Water Expansion Fund, and it's adjusted at year end based on the number of connections and revenues in there that we receive, and then we keep a tally.
What do we have down in Jenny Lind? Accounts? How many accounts do we have, or?
I don't have that off the top of my head. Joel, do you happen to know?
Total population is just over 10,000.
Oh.
And I think we have a neighborhood of 4,500, somewhere in there.
That'd be La Cantena, Gold Creek.
Oh, okay.
Downtown.
Oh, okay.
All of Rancho Calaveras.
Oh, okay.
4,000 lots.
That's
there.
a good number.
I mean, there's definitely development. It's probably the best development potential in the county, maybe Copperopolis, but so one day it'll grow. I mean,
it'll come.
We'll be ready.
I'm not worried. It's just a matter of time.
So I'm just waiting. We'll hear this every year.
You'll probably hear that. Actually, remember, this debt only goes through September 1st, 2017. You're the 15-16 budget this year. Next year, 16-17. And then the following budget will be the last year, and we're only budgeting for half a year's worth of debt service. So after that, there is no more obligation.
Okay, so it's on that other sheet where it's expiring, or that other investment sheet that we reviewed?
It's on the investment.
Yes.
Once an In-N-Out burger comes, boy, the place will just go
Okay. So the next item is, have I answered all your questions?
Yes, thank you.
The next item there is for transfers in for CIP, capital outlay, and capital R&R. And Director Strange, I think you had the question on some of these pieces of capital outlay equipment we're purchasing. In your packet, and it was towards the end on page 12, is the list of capital outlay, both the equipment and projects that we're going to be purchasing. Pickup trucks, Bobcat, mini excavator, and I think you alluded to that, Director Strange. We don't have enough funding in the operating revenues to cover these. Although we do have the ability to use some of that special project funds to bring in for one-time expenses. And these are one-time expenses. So in part, the transfer in from the special project fund is going to help fund these items. And in this particular case, we're pulling in $291,700 out of the special project fund to pay for a portion of the capital outlay, which totals $411,700. So it's going to pay for a good portion of it. We're also pulling in $70,000 from the CIP for capital outlay for staff costs. Part of what our staff supports is CIP projects and such, and it's been our practice that if there's a project that's associated on our CIP list, and in this case we have a couple of them when we're talking about capacity fee updates, if it's done by staff time, the cost is borne by the appropriate fund. So if we're doing a lock intent to sewer capacity update, lock intent to sewer fund pays for that project. If we have Copper Cove sewer for a capacity fee update, that has been paid for by the expansion fund. So as those particular projects are paid, those funds are being transferred over to the operating fund where the costs are being borne. So that's kind of how we do that. And the same thing with the capital R&R. Your board has authorized, and I want to word this correctly, we're restaffing the engineering department to prior recession levels because the engineering department had been decimated over many years. We're well aware of that. So some of the work that is being done by these particular individuals, like I think it's a senior associate civil engineer, the new civil engineer that was hired, new workers coming on, techs and so forth, is work directly related to CIP projects and also to capital R&R projects. We're doing a lot of that work in-house. So if they're related to these projects, money is transferred out of those funds to cover those staffing costs. And that's where the other transfers are coming in. And we took a very conservative approach. We didn't rely upon exorbitant numbers as to how much time the district engineer uses or so forth. But we have a fairly, most of our CIP work is capital R&R work. And they spend a significant amount of time on those projects. And those, again, are transfers in from those individual funds into the operating budget where those expenses are, whether it's debt service, staffing costs, professional service contracts with consultants for studies and things like that. That's what helps cover those costs. That basically covers our revenues and transfers in. This is I apologize for this. This is a small diagram, but it is a summary of page 2. So this is where you can find the detail. Now I'd like to move on to expenditures. Again, this is our day-to-day operations. I'm going to just kind of cover it briefly by the salaries and benefits, And then when we get down into, and then I'm going to jump into the individual departments. I'm not going to go into detail on overall looking at services and supplies, and I'll deal with those within the individual departments. But as a overall view of salaries and benefits, what you're looking at is we're going to add 1 FTE. That's an acronym for full-time equivalent. We're adding 1 body in next year's budget. And this is, again, bringing our staffing level back. This is in the utilities department. They used to have 2 admin techs, admin individuals, 1 for engineering, 1 for utilities. When the 2 departments came under the director, they went down to 1 and they found out it's not enough. They just can't survive. So what we're doing is it was split half to utilities, half to engineering. We're moving the half from utilities to make a full-time position in engineering to support all the projects. And we're going to be putting in this admin person, and we budgeted for 6 months. But we had to increase our FTE count, our personnel allocation, by that 1 body, even if it's only funding for half a year. There is a 2% COLA as per the MOU with SEIU. That is for, it goes into effect July 1 of 2015. We did see an increase in our PERS rates. This is the employer share. It went up to about 17.5% for classic employees. These are those that are under the original PERS calculations. Any person hired after a certain date, I believe it's in 2013, the costs are, it's a lower benefit and our costs are lower. They're down in the 6% range. Just as a reminder, employees pay the full share of their employee portion of PERS, which is 8% of the total of their salary. So of my salary, I pay 8% of it. Everybody, and collectively, all employees pay the 8% employee share. And that was phased in over a number of years. And this is the second year we're paying the full burden of the employee share.
And you said that was, excuse me, 8%?
8%. Prior to 2012, I think it was, or 11, the district paid the 8% as well as the employer share. And now that's been switched. Medical insurance costs are projected to increase 6%. And we do get our medical insurance through PERS and through Blue Cross. We have, as one of the options, we go through PERS. They have pretty good bargaining power on their part. This is not related to the retirement program. This is a separate portion of PERS that provides medical benefits. And we use Aqua JPIA for our vision and dental.
We just did some refiguring of some insurance, and that was for?
Disability and life.
Disability and life, okay. So this is over and above, okay.
Okay. The next couple slides summarizes the department's budget. If you start with page 5 of the handout here, you can see the detail. I'm going to provide just a high-level summary and the increases and decreases. And we'll get for detail, you can look at it. It shows, just for a footnote, on your detail page here, starting with page 5, it's divided into 3 sections: salaries and benefits on the top, services and supplies in the middle, and capital outlay on the bottom. So if we're looking at the board of directors budget, this budget has been, and this is from prior year budget. This is how we look at things, not necessarily from prior year expenses, because obviously we're not there yet. We won't have those numbers until August or September. Compared to prior year budget, the budget's been reduced by $85,590.
By how much?
$85,590. Now, and if we look at that, $35,000 of it's from salaries and benefits. Your board codified those changes this morning by ordinance.
What do you know about that?
Remember that the general manager made reference to the fact that we anticipated that and it's been put into this budget. Election costs were lowered by 40,000. We don't have an election in 16 or 15, 16.
Don't we?
No,
No.
Not till November of 16, which is 16, 17.
it's the next budget.
You're thinking of a recall. No.
No, I think that
Are you suggesting?
my term ends, I think, this year. We haven't resolved that,
But there's no election.
that I'm aware of.
Is there going to be a cost associated with that?
Possibly not, you'd be seating that position, not going to an actual election. That position, you could seat someone for that position.
We still have to, would we have to go through a process of advertising it? And
That would be, you can appoint to fill the vacancy. You only have to publish notice of it, and that's it.
so there's really no overall cost that we
No.
could budget?
No.
But there will be one seat in 16, 17. And then we get back on the regular cycle.
That thing is so
No,
messy.
there'd be two. Be two.
I think we'll be on this. We'll finally be.
You're going to get back on the regular cycle.
Yeah.
And we also reduced travel costs by $10,000.
No, just 2, 3.
So that's what makes up the $85,000
Me and you
decrease.
next year.
And again, the detail is here on page 5. Under general management, we have an overall decrease of a little over $67,000. Salary and benefits decreased by $95,000 due to the retirement of the assistant general manager. He's going to be here for a few months in fiscal year 16-17 or 15-16, and then we're looking at not filling that position for the remainder of that fiscal year. So you have salary savings there. We reduced outside legal costs by $25,000, but we increased professional services by about $71,000 for water rights. And that goes in line with your comment, Director Strange, are we funding it? And so we do have those costs identified.
Good.
Would you accept questions on the whole page or just the salary piece?
You can go for the whole page.
Okay, I only have one question. In regards to professional services, you're showing a budget of $164,939, which is up from what we saw in the Finance Committee.
That is correct. The reason for that, I believe we added more for water rights.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall, Director Mills, and all the iterations of the budget, draft budget where we got to this point. I believe we had that, wasn't there one contract that was split between two departments,
Yes.
as I recall?
Right.
Between utilities and water resource programs. So we moved that contract, that's
So
the
it's all in
John
your-
Mills advocacy, all into this one. And this also includes an amount for federal advocacy as well in the budget. I think those are the two main contracts. There may be some very small amounts for other services, but that's the primary amount.
Thank you. That's the right position to have it. I just wanted to clarify it.
Yes. Any further questions on general management?
I just see a trend in professional services increasing throughout all the different departments and all with this, and yet we're bringing in staff, and it probably reflects some of the areas that have not had attention that are going to need attention, including water rights and other stuff, I assume.
And a number of those items that we're bringing in outside help, it's either because we don't have the staffing resources or we don't have the expertise in-house. Okay. I'm going to jump here to page number 8 under Administrative Services. And this is my anal side. I like to see things in alphabetical order after we hit the board and the general management. The board, just a side note, the reason I do this is board comes first. You're the governing body. The general manager comes second because he oversees the departments, and then from that point on, I go alphabetical.
I'm sorry, I do have one other comment, and that is also the increase in overtime throughout the different areas and how that aligns. Is there, a reason for that, or the thought behind the increase in overtime, or the expected increase in overtime?
We look at historical trends, and this particular budget does not show some of the year-to-dates we have in place. So we look at that. There are some salaried people in this particular, like general management. So if we do have them stay over, whether, and I believe Mona, if Mona's asked to stay after hours and to hit board meetings or whatever, to hit meetings after hours, that's where the overtime comes from.
So the reason for the increase may be one of just not tracking it that, or having the historic data?
It varies. When you look at utilities,
right,
it's very difficult to estimate. Right. We look at it historically, but if you have water breaks on a weekend or in the middle of the night, you have to fix them.
Yep.
And that's where the majority of our overtime is. When you look at the other departments, it's pretty immaterial compared to the overall budget.
Yeah. Okay.
And as you say, you're looking at that historically to
yeah, we tend to look at it, whether it's short-term, looking back. Sometimes people shift. We move some people from one department to the other. And if that's done mid-year, such as we moved an engineering tech from admin services back to engineering, we didn't have the budget for him in engineering. We didn't shift the budget. So that's why sometimes you'll see increases there as well. Under admin services, salaries and benefits decreased by almost $130,000, in part to a transfer of one body to engineering, just as I mentioned. We have increased professional services by $20,000. This is a combination of, we pay for data pros, which is our billing services for the invoices and mailings. We also have budgeted some money here for the ADP, which is our payroll system. So we're seeing that being brought in under this particular area because payroll is somewhat under, at least the processing of the checks and everything is under admin services. So that's why we see an increase there.
Okay, we were going to put in a new system for our billing.
For our...
The payment is no.
Payment. Yeah.
Yes, and that is moving forward for the online.
Yeah,
that's no cost.
That does, but we still have to mail out statements. And Data Pros is the mailing of the statements.
Right.
We're hoping at some point people go electronic.
Oh, yes, and
but mail costs go up, and so that's something that will, postage costs go up. So at some point, that's always something that increases a little bit each year.
Yeah. This time, didn't Congress say no to the post office about increasing their rates, or are we looking at that again?
I don't know.
Actually, they said no to putting funding in for their pension system.
Oh, okay. They told them no somewhere.
We're almost up to, I think, up to 50 cents per stamp.
I just want to know one thing you see in percentage-wise that looks pretty dramatic is the water conservation budget, and that's actually an item that's moving from the water resource budget to the admin services, is because that's within the department that Joel is in, and he's administering that program. So it's actually not an addition; it's just a moving of that from one unit to another.
Do you see any Prop 1 money or anything coming to help offset?
We are in addition to that. I don't know that it's going to offset what we've got here, but I think in addition to it, we could have the opportunity to leverage. One thing I know we're trying to do right now with the T-Stand RWM is to gain access to some of the funds that they have for conservation efforts. They've got a multi-million-dollar grant for conservation program. Probably, I would imagine, the MAC will probably be looking at that as well. To the extent we can leverage any of that, we will. It is it's hard to imagine, though, that we wouldn't spend something at least close to what we spent this current fiscal year, given, the new conservation requirements.
Because I did attend a Blue Lake Springs shareholder meeting, and there was reference to a grant for water conservation, and I don't know, if we've looked at that or...
It's my understanding that there was the T-Stand RWM did receive, I think, $3 million in grant funds for conservation efforts already through Prop 84.
Right.
And I know Joel is working with them to try to build that into the most successful program for the region we can. And I would expect we would gain access to some of the benefit of that by, having those
Maybe,
services.
so I didn't get any specifics, so I don't know what that.
They're currently advertising for, the RCD is going to house a water conservation position, and that position is now being advertised. So they're looking to fill that. Yeah, no, what about drought relief? Would the drought relief kind of offset some of that water conservation that we're doing, including potential staff time, you think, Dave, or is
You
that
mean
a
some of the
stretch?
emergency drought relief funding?
Yeah, any drought relief that might be out there in the future.
In the way of conservation funds, I don't see it so much within that area. Where I think we will, and I fully expect we will see significant amount of drought funding from the state, potentially feds, is with the Lake Tulloch, lowering of the intake there, and with the water supply for Sheep Ranch and our efforts to restore the water storage at Blaggen Mill Pond. Those are two that we're working on right now to try to get funds for under that emergency drought relief funds. But it's always possible. I mean, there's always, they're constantly evolving, that the governor's trying to push more money out for conservation efficiency, and, it's possible that we could get more than that. And in part, I mean, you think about it too, a lot of our infrastructure projects that we already have prepared and are high priority projects in our R&R program, some of those are really water conservation projects. I mean, you think of the transmission line replacements are a real opportunity to achieve water efficiency. And that's the kind of thing, that there may be new pots of money available to us as, again, the drought funds emerge.
You're looking at me like I have a question. Okay, I'll give you one.
No, I'm not fishing.
Administrative technology, 34,000. This year it was 20,000, so you're seeing some additional needs?
Actually, let me go back to that.
That's the third one down on services and supplies.
Admin technology?
Yes, you're showing 34,000 there.
And
our this prior year budget was 20.
Actually, I'm showing 34. You're looking at page 8?
Yes. Or, I'm sorry, this year to date was 20,000.
20,000.
Yeah.
John's been pretty frugal year to date, and one of the things is he's now doing some ordering. That will go up. We're going to be a little bit more aggressive. We're looking for some additional resources to assist him in getting that moving along.
And you'll also use probably that 5,000 in capital outlay down at the bottom then as well for that?
That is actually a software upgrade, and I believe it's the Questies program.
Okay, thank you.
We're quite a bit behind on our updates on that. On to engineering technical services. This is on page 7. This is where you're going to see the biggest jump in budget because of the fact we're restaffing to get us back up to prior levels. We're adding positions. The increase of 400,000, part of that is because we're moving bodies from different departments over. We're actually moving this particular year 2.5 FTE. We're moving one from utilities. We're moving that filled the engineering tech position. We're moving a half-time position for admin, and we're also moving a construction inspector coming over. We're also adding the full funding for the district engineer. Now, this may sound a little odd. In last year, because we didn't hire district engineer, well, we did. We just shifted Charles up to that position. Charles's position for supervising civil engineer was funded for the entire year in 14-15. What wasn't funded for the entire fiscal year was the district engineer because we knew there'd be a recruitment process. So now, on the books, just position-wise, we're fully funding that district engineer for 12 months, in addition to Charles's old position, which we've now hired a civil engineer to fill. Hopefully I didn't confuse everyone with that.
No, I understood it.
So we're bringing back up the staffing levels, which requires some additional costs. We've added to his training budget to get some of these people trained. We're going to be working on reinvigorating our GIS system or getting it back up and going again. So there's going to be costs associated with that, with both service maintenance contracts and with some training and getting the staff trained. President Underhill?
Yes, I'd like to hear R&R thrown in there.
Yes, they're doing R&R as well. Yes,
well, as well, I'd like it to have a little
That's
bit
a great
more.
point. That's actually something I'd already turned on my mic to mention before we got to the end of this, is that a significant portion of the total budget for engineering will come from the R&R funds, because they are going to be spending a lot of their time on that. Particularly our two engineers are, and the idea, and this is what I talked to the board about some time ago, is we wanted to try to maximize using our internal resources and not be so reliant on consultants, particularly in the area of project management, where that makes me really uncomfortable to have outside entities managing. We don't have that set of internal eyes and that kind of quality control and checks and balances that I would be more comfortable with. So we built that into this and where we are today.
Well, I'm looking forward to that, because it just bothers me to pay the debt service on these R&R loans when we don't see anything happening.
I understand, and I was just going back, just build on what Dave said. The transfers is that the funding source, but Lift Station 22, that should be completed later this summer, and that was a significant $1.6 million wastewater project, which will take up a huge chunk of the wastewater loan that we took out.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is under construction right now. It's going according to schedule. We're actually a little bit ahead of schedule. It's going to be completed in July. And that's one that we're going to come back with a project closeout to report to the board. We need to be showing what are we doing on these. Some of the other projects, just to get to a point where you can go out to bid on the project for the construction contract, is what, I know Charles in particular is spending most of his time on that, in particular for 3A. Try to make that happen. So we'll be coming back soon with updates on those as well. Okay.
The next department I'd like to look at is utilities. That's on page 9. This is the bulk of our district's budget, because they have the bulk of the staff. They handle treatment plants, collections, distributions. Just some highlights here. The budget was increased by about $240,000 from the prior year budget. Salaries and benefits, though, were reduced by $107,000, due in part to transferring some positions outside from that department over to engineering, and also due to the retirement of our director in that, or the planned retirement of our director in that area. We do have funding for his replacement or placements.
Yes, a succession plan for the two positions, assistant to the general manager, which some of his responsibilities have been engineering in nature. So part of what's being taken on by the engineering department and the reason to have additional staffing resources is to take on those responsibilities. And as well, we're also, like Jeff said, we're also planning for the succession planning for the departure of the existing utilities director in a basically a reorg of that group to go into effect first of next year. So.
Under services and supplies, we see increases in CPPA. Chemical costs have gone up again this year, and we do have a significant increase in our capital outlay budget. And I would like to refer you back to the capital outlay schedule on page number 12, and I'd like to go over this for you.
Before we leave this page, Jeff, what's going up in our utilities and the services and supplies? The 44,000. What would that represent? First item, utilities on page 9.
That's our CPPA electrical costs.
Okay.
It's a roll up of our power costs. So we see a little bit of increase in PG&E, but CPPA increased their rates as well.
What percentage?
They go by kilowatt hour, and I think it was a half a cent per kilowatt hour this go round. They keep raising it. They're trying to minimize it,
Right.
but eventually it's going to fall onto the shoulders of the participants. But I have to remind the board that we're paying less than half of what we pay out in the open market.
Jeff, a couple things. The material supplies and then safety materials and supplies, really shouldn't that be in one account?
Actually, and this is a good point, this is a summary of our costs. If you look at your budget status report, we have much more detailed account numbers.
Right.
And so this is kind of a roll-up. We prefer the details and breaking out safety because this is something that we want to track when it comes to safety materials and supplies. But I know that there's some questions in regards to how we have, do we have enough accounts? Do we have the right account numbers? I did not go into the detail in this particular one. I love the opportunity to sit down with you and show you what our plan is for next fiscal year when we're going to add a few new account numbers and descriptions. But we're going to do it as of July 1.
Okay, so you're not ready yet. Also on lab services, knowing how much we've been spending here recently because of the loss of Sierra or Foothill, should we be thinking a little bit higher than this number on lab services?
I can address
Yeah,
that.
if you want to, sure. You probably have more information for Teresa. I know she's been following this very closely, so yeah.
Yes. It is. Teresa from Tanaka, from our operations, follows this closely, and this is her projection based on some current bills that we see and moving on. So I have faith in her numbers. However, if at some point in the future they do raise their costs, we're going to have to adapt. And my budgeting philosophy is this. If you're within the service and supply area, if you're under in one account, you can go over in another. I look at the bottom line. I don't hold people by individual account numbers because this is our best estimate moving forward. And so they are very good at times in that balancing act.
What was the increase of purchased water?
I believe that is the cost we have for CPUD.
The water we purchased from
West
Gads,
Point.
is that correct? To
Yes.
serve the West Point, Woolseyville. And I was just made a note on my page here that we need to change the description of this account, I think, to wholesale water.
Purchase.
Because purchase makes you think we're buying bottled water and, we're going to buy $15,000 of bottled water.
Although with this drought, maybe we ought to keep it in for bottled water up there.
Yeah. However, just as a footnote, we do purchase bottled water for our plants.
I know you do.
We have to.
I think you
Provide
could,
them water because we can't provide, it doesn't, especially the wastewater treatment plants,
Right.
they can't take water out of their plants for the water side.
sorry, I was going to say, I think you could irrigate them with non-potable.
Now the big items, and then going on to the capital outlay. In looking at this, I was skeptical at first because we added some items to this list, but after sitting down and talking with Teresa and identifying the reasons why, I feel very confident in this list. Obviously, we do replace pickup trucks. We can no longer buy the Rangers. They're not available, so we're looking at half tons. When we buy 1 ton trucks, we buy the frame, and we basically reuse the back end.
The body.
The back body of it. We have been using, I can't remember, Vallecito. They had been using some equipment. I apologize. The brain's still not there. Not getting enough blood through it and oxygen. So anyway, to deal with their treatment ponds and storage ponds, they need a bobcat to get out there and maneuver and move things around. Their existing equipment just doesn't handle it.
You have a very good memory. You brought it back. Yeah, the existing ATV equipment is not, it just creates a lot of problems with blowing tires and that kind of thing, and then having to service that continuously.
Thank you. West Point, we talked about this, the mini excavator is replacing a backhoe. Dump trailer for Arnold. They have a significant need for a dump trailer there to hold the sludge because we have to hold it for a number of days before we can ship it.
Is it going to be like a semi-trailer or?
Yeah, it's like a half bobtail.
It's what now?
It's a used
No, but for a semi, or is it?
Yeah, for a semi.
Towed by a semi. It's not like a.
Yeah.
No, it's not like the small ones you can pull behind a 1-ton.
Yeah, and this is just mimicking what we've done at Vallecito that's been successful and been able to store it directly in there and not have to move it again. And of course, that can create some odor issues for the neighbors, and we just as soon get it in there, let it wait, and then we can move it directly out.
Yeah. Instead of having to move it a number of times, this reduces the amount of work. TV van retrofit. We have a TV van for our collection systems, and it needs to, we've had it for a number of years. It needs a retrofit. We've got a bid for that. And although it's significant, after reviewing with Teresa the needs, I approve of this item. We'd have to do some SCADA upgrades in our water treatment plants, different software, I believe, they're required usage. We do have a manhole replacement program up in the Arnold area. We have an I&I issue there. And we've identified about 150 manholes up there that are the old pick style where the holes are there to pick them out that allow I&I, inflow and infiltration. And we've, over the past 5 years, I believe 2 of those years, in reporting to the State Water Resource Control Board, we've been high on I&I. So to be able to keep our general permit, I believe it is, we have to address the I&I issue. If we don't get to keep the general permit and have to go to a different type permit, there'll be more testing, more costs associated with it. So this is a 2-year program, $20,000 this year, $20,000 next year. It's for the purchase of the manholes, and our staff will be installing them, and we will be surplusing them. I just don't know what the value of our current manholes will be.
Is that part of our CPI or R&R program, or can it be?
No. Not.
It wouldn't fit?
And then finally, we have a software upgrade, and this is coming out of the admin budget for $5,000.
Well, maybe that's something that the board would like to look at, is what is the threshold for capital R&R? It's in the future.
What do you mean threshold?
How many dollars, what value would be the limit of, when you reach that point, it should go into the R&R program rather than...
If we're just taking this out of our regular annual operations revenue, it may benefit us to take a look at that.
We can. Generally, Director Mills and Director Adamant, we use a $50,000 threshold for CIPs. This is under that.
Oh, okay.
And so it's something that is more operational. But we constantly look at what projects should be in R&R and what should be in the utilities capital equipment and project budget.
Could we go back to the manhole replacement? You said inflow I&I.
Yes.
Do we have a test for that? Is that how we determine that?
Well, what they look at is the flows coming into the treatment plant. Mm-hmm. And the flows they've recorded have been higher in certain rainy seasons, that they can see the peak, and it's associated with that. And so actually Teresa is, as we speak, up there right now with the State Water Resource Control Board, letting them know of our project and our intent to forestall the move away from the general permit. So we're hoping that with this proactive approach, we satisfy their requirements and their needs. And so we do have, not all manholes up there are created, have the issue. They've identified 150 of them. And again, district staff will do this project.
And then, that I&I is something that, we don't need to be treating. So this really is an ongoing operational savings as well to reduce the flows, unnecessary flows to the plant. So.
Is that the only area that we really have the problem? It's not a Copperopolis problem or
I don't,
Vallecito?
well, at this particular point in time, it's not on the radar. I think at some point, once we finish this, we may look at copper as an area of concern. But this is where the State Water Resource Control Board is looking right now. So maybe this is something as we move along and see, because this was just brought to our attention last week as we sat down and went through this. That's why it's new to you, Director Mills, is that as we look at this and see this process, Teresa and her group can go ahead and identify other areas where we have I&I issues. And again, I don't know what we're going to get as far as surplus, but I have heard on the news at times people steal manhole covers and take them in and for scrap metal. So hopefully we'll be able to get some money coming in. And then once we have that, we can then budget for it the next time. We'll get a feel for it. Any further questions on capital outlay? Just two more departments, water resources and non-departmental. Water resources is on page 10. A budget decrease of $33,000. The majority of this is moving water conservation from water resources over to admin services and under customer service. That was $30,000. There are a number of projects within this. This is where we have historically budgeted, tried to meet what our anticipated workload is going to be, but we have not had the resources to do it. Basically, for the last several years, it's been Larry and myself doing a good part of this work. But now we have Peter Martin, and I'm gladly handing off some of my work, and I'm sure Larry is as well.
Excuse me.
So we're looking to really see some progress in a number of these areas as moving forward. We do have the Urban Water Management Plan, the 2015 version that is due, and even though it's 2015, the state still hasn't come out with their guidelines yet. It'll be due in 2016. So there's a lot of work that's going to be on Peter's plate, plus the IRWMs and other items.
Your outside legal fees, that's primarily just Stanislaus River?
Stanislaus River, grab this.
Those are the outside water right
Water
legal
rights.
fees. And that was just, I think the description is meant to just be kind of an example, but I think we will, and really it's us, again, coming up with the focus of what we absolutely have to get done in the next 12 months as far as primarily protecting the water rights in hand. And so, most of that is falling within the Stanislaus watershed, but very well we could have things that we need to deal with up in the Bear Creek watershed as well.
And HCP.
Oh, true. Yeah, the HCP on the Calaveras River. Yeah, as well.
And finally, non-departmental. This is kind of a catch-all for costs that are not associated with any particular department, whether it be admin services, engineering, or such. As you can see on page 11, there's no salaries and benefits because we don't have anybody in there. The cost that you see is basically utility costs is for this building and some of the costs associated with maintaining this. But the key portions that I want to show here, that if you look at the detail, is Hogan, where we have a cost-sharing agreement with MID that we have to pay, and that's where we identify those costs for the operational costs.
With MID?
Modesto Irrigation.
Modesto Irrigation.
On Hogan?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Retiree health costs, that's the pre-funding portion of our retiree health benefit. And the funding for current retirees. There's two components. So we have an actuarial study that we do every 3 years. One is being undertaken right now, and that kind of lays out our guidelines for those costs. And then insurance, that's our general and property and liability insurance. Those actually have gone down for this year. So if you look at it, it's pretty much a wash for the service and supplies budget. Maybe $4,000, $4,700. Yes, ma'am.
The thing that popped out was the debt service increased by 77,000.
Yes. Part of that is on our debt service on our budget last year. One of the loans was omitted on the interest payment, so I was off in that. That was my fault. But also when we're looking at the R&R loans, and each year the debt service varies for all these loans. It's not, some of them, when you look at the equipment loans, it's constant, but all the other loans, it varies at some rate. In our water loan through Umpqua for the capital R&R, it started out interest only,
right.
And then we're going to start paying principal. So you're going to see some increase in those costs.
One of the things that we had talked about when we were going through in the Finance Committee was all of these, well, smaller in comparison figures. Mm-hmm. Why can't we get rid of some of them?
And that's something we are looking at. Patty, Dave, and I had that conversation, especially the Wallace loan.
Right.
We're going to look at that. But President Underhill, what I'd like to do is to get through the audit of this fiscal year and see how we have funds left over and maybe use some of those one-time funds to fund that.
Absolutely.
Some of them, like the interest on New Hogan's interest and principal on that has a significant principal amount at the end. We don't have the funds to pay that off.
Look at the Wallace and the back on.
We don't have the funds right now to pay it off, especially in this particular upcoming year. If at some point we find we do have that, and the interest rates on those on that one is quite low. It's under 3%. I think it was 2.9194, something like that.
I'd brought this up to Dave before, and that is that we should be looking to borrow money in-house from our own funds if possible, than to go out into the market and look for that money. So I would like to say if we've got excess capital somewhere that we might be able to use that would eliminate the interest cost to our ratepayers, that would be a win.
And that's what we've done, and we can look at that. We did that for the building, obviously. I have to make sure the board and the audience is aware of this. We inherited the Wallace equipment loan when we annexed Wallace water and sewer into us. So that is something that they had initiated. We assumed that debt. But we are looking at that as to see, sometimes there's prepayment penalties. We have to work within the agreements.
But, I'm looking at this 6,000.
Yeah, if they're not significant.
9,000.
If they're not significant, why not just clear it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And again, we have to look at the individual loan documents to see where we are within it. And as far as prepayment penalties and such, we do. But Patty and I and Dave had discussed last week that this is one where we're going to target the Wallace.
That's fine. Thank you.
Any questions on any of the department budgets? Now, I did address capital outlay, and that was part of the utilities budget that we went through. So I'm just going to skip over this slide if that's okay. We discussed this at length. And I'm going to go straight to expenditure summaries. What is our budget? This is basically a brief summary of page number 1. This document right here, out of the handout that's part of your board packet. Basically, this is the expenditure side, showing what our salaries and benefits are for preliminary budget for 15-16, 8.3 million, 6.5 million service and supplies. Total on the operating side, 14.7. Then we have 411,700 for capital outlay, which we went over, and just under 2.5 million for debt service. And the proposed budget for next year is $17,612,197, which is about $483,000 more than last year. which reflects some additional capital outlay costs for the equipment and some debt service and some costs associated with increase from our vendors. When I break it down by departments, you can see on the right side, the right column variance to budget. Some departments are under, some departments are over, but in all, we see a $482,000 increase. Percentage-wise, we're looking at about 2.8%. Total increase. When we show the revenues, less expenses, the bottom line, we are obligated to have a balanced budget. And based on the revenues that I talked about earlier, the transfers in, the expenditures that we discussed, we're projecting a surplus of a little over $6,000, basically a balanced budget. And that is what we are submitting to your board for discussion and approval, adoption on the next board meeting, June 24th. And if there are any questions on the operating budget, I'll take them now. My goal here today is getting your blessing to move forward with this operating budget, and then we can bring it back for a much shorter discussion. Because I know Director Davidson just loves my budget talk.
When people say if we don't earn our money, come to these meetings.
I'm his favorite presenter. Long and dry.
It's just a monumental effort. I really do appreciate the work you guys put into this. I mean, there's so many things that are just that are important to be doing, and I really appreciate staff's effort in putting it together in a way that I can understand it, at least to the level I think I need to anyway.
Seeing no questions, I am going to move on to the next phase of what you're going to be adopting next, or 2 weeks from today as well, is our personnel allocation, staffing allocation. It's not included at this particular time. I don't have the sheet, but here's a summary. It's going to be included next time. Basically, we're adding 1 FTE and shifting people around. This just summarizes what I mentioned previously. Basically, boosting backup engineering. We added 1 FTE of a utilities admin tech to utilities, and we're adding 1 body going from 64 to 65. Now, when I first got here, our staffing allocation was in the 70s. So we have cut over the years. We're not growing exorbitantly. We're just bringing back the levels to meet the needs specifically in engineering and meet the workload.
One of the things that concerned me and why this position is on here is because when I came in, I saw a lot of people that should have been doing spending their times on things like project management or analysis for regulatory compliance, having to spend a substantial portion of their time on things like the correspondence associated with that and handling that, and it just there's a real efficiency if we can get some more assistance in this way, and really not overburden one person to have to provide service to both utilities and engineering, which is just an incredible amount of, particularly on the communication side and handling all of those communications and even purchasing and things like that. It just becomes way too much for one person.
Moving on and to the CIP, and I apologize, this is very small, that's why it's in your handouts here in the packet. In years past, what we look at are new projects and carryover projects. This year, everything's pretty much a carryover project. And this is all related to either grant projects that are in the process or our capital R&R program. The first one is a redwood tank replacement project. This is up at Big Trees. This is something we've got a FEMA grant for this. This is a pre-disaster mitigation grant. And this has been ongoing. It's been slow because of the process working with the state and because this is on state parkland. And we have to go through multiple layers of bureaucracy. But Charles is plugging away at this one. Grant money has already been approved, so it's a match here, 75-25. Ebbets Pass Reach 3A, you're well aware of that project. Tank management program. This is a program where we're looking at tanks on an annual basis, whether they need to be rehabbed, major rehab, minor rehab. This is going to be an ongoing allocation each year to be able to manage this program. Reach 1 in Ebbets Pass, the transmission line, that's the next transmission line project up there. Once 3A is up and underway, they're going to start fairly soon. And the dollars you see here for next year is basically the initial seeding money for planning and initial design. So we can get ahead of it knowing how long it takes to do a lot of the environmental and a lot of work, so that when we get to the point where 3A is completely done, we're hopefully going to be ready to go out to bid, closer to go out to bid for Reach 1. The Lake Tulloch Water Intake Extension Project, we're hoping for significant grant money here. If not, we're probably going to be looking at capital R&R funds. But I was not here for the presentation, but I believe Bill and Dave addressed that and our aggressive approach to soliciting drought funds for this project.
Yes, and I'll just jump in on that. The application, the final application for funding is going to go in today, is the expectation, and we've, Bill and John Christensen, the underwater engineering expert that we retained, have come up with a final design and proposed cost to do the project at about $650,000. So I know the price has been fluctuating all over, but there's so many different ways you can do this project, and they finally dialed it into what will give us an intake below the low water mark, below the dead pool, that we will be at a 520 elevation and can continue to provide supply. I know it's a little bit off topic, but just to let you know that the good thing about the way they've designed it is we can use a standard set of pumps for this as opposed to the custom design, which take up to 6-7 months to manufacture. So we expect that the manufacturing time of the pumps will actually be cut in half. So we expect to have the project installed and operational by this fall.
You said the time's cut in half. Is that and the price has also gone down? Is that the reason the price has gone down, because of the non-specialized pumps?
That's part of it, and part of it is the way that they're actually doing it. They're actually going to be floating the pumps. They're using divers to float the pumps. We're doing it instead of bringing in a barge with a crane, and it's a more economical way to do it. And it's actually been located in an area that gets us to the deep water but doesn't require as much piping. I think the amount of pipe is down to about 350 feet, linear feet. So, I mean, they've spent many, many days working on this to come up with the design that they proposed. And again, the main thing I was really excited here was the pump manufacturing is 2 to 3 months now. That means that we should have everything in place by October.
Special underwater engineer.
You got a job?
Yeah, no, good title.
And he's actually promised to show us a video of how this kind of project would work. So he's got some kind of mock-up, I guess, on the computer that he can provide to us. So we might have that in here for a board meeting at some point.
Very nice.
The last project on the list is Jenny Lynn Tank AB transmission line. When you look at CIPs, obviously you're looking at multi-year projects. And what we provide to you at this particular point in time in the center of this sheet is the cash flow projections over the next 3 fiscal years. The first column in blue is the 15-16 cash flow requirements at $5.9 million. Then we have cash flow in 16-17 for the second or cleanup phase of some of these projects. And as you look on AB transmission line in 17-18, that's when we're going to start the design phase. But we want to give you a snapshot, clear snapshot of the projects that we are anticipating to work on. And on the far right area, you can see the funding sources. Reserves at $334,000. That's where we're going to do the local match for the Redwood tank replacement, because at that time we identified the special project fund, property tax money in the 108 account, Fund 108, because we didn't have R&R at the time we applied for this grant, something that was been multiple years in the making. Capital R&R of $2.5 million and grants of $3 million. So you can see, and we're anticipating a significant portion of grant funding for the Lake Tulloch project. You can see how aggressive we are in getting grant monies. particularly for our water projects. Now, the next page is our wastewater
Can
project.
I ask you one more thing? Because, all right, so you've done the thing, what I was wondering about was on this tank management program, the total cost is $1 million, but we've broken it down in increments, or, you know, 250,000
A year.
a year,
Yeah.
so that, okay, that makes more sense, because I was thinking that, why would we want to do that? Because you said every year we're going to be plugging in $1 million.
No, and obviously we can't afford that.
Right,
Nor do we
right.
have the resources to do that
Right.
amount of work. So this is engineering Charles's estimate. I have a feeling that $1 million is going to grow over time as we really do have the tank inventory, but we're looking at a 4-year window right now. And so we're going to be doing that because there's a number of tanks out there that need immediate.
Right, we've seen pictures of those, and
Yes.
yes. Mhm.
Yeah, we may get into unforeseen stuff here with some water reliability during this drought and a tremendous amount of, hopefully state and federal monies that we can throw at that. So we'll see what appears or, moves around
And that's
within
where
this
we
next
were
4
able
years.
to, on the big tree, because we're looking at replacing a number of our redwood tanks because of the fire hazard to them, and they leak, and so forth. Although they're gorgeous, and I'd love to have some of the redwood in my home, it's just not economical, and they're not long-term. They've been there for a while, but they're going to need replacement. But even some of our steel tanks, it's not build them and forget about them. You have to have maintenance, real proactive maintenance. And unfortunately, in some areas, we have been neglecting that, and now we're really starting to put forth an effort into not just taking care of the worst case scenario, but doing the annual maintenance or maybe every 2 or 3 year maintenance to keep them up and running. Now, on the wastewater projects, there's a number of projects in here. The first one is a Copper Cove Reclaim Permit project that's been ongoing. That's the one where we're under a state order, a time order to rectify some issues. Bill has been working with them. We're hoping to keep a $5 to $6 million project down to a couple $100,000. That's an ongoing process. We do have requirements to hire consultants to do a lot of the technical work for us. The Copper Cove Lift Station 8, 12, 13, and Force Main Bypass, we're going to start the design phase of that project. That's the next project in the Copper Cove area after we do Lift Station 22. 22, we show some $900,000. That's an estimate of the bills that we'll pay. Remember that sometimes the work is going to continue after June 30th, which is part of the end of our fiscal year. So we're going to have to, we've set aside some money for that. Lift station upgrades, that's going to be an annual cost because we have a number of lift stations where there's going to be electrical upgrades, flash arc requirements, and so forth, equipment, just like we did for 9, 10, and 11 down in Poker Flats this past year. Vallecito Wastewater Storage Pond Expansion Project, that's a Prop 84 grant. We're having to set that aside and look at it because the DSOD has come back and said there's certain requirements we have to meet because of the elevation and the storage capacity of the pond. We're re-looking at that project to see if it's actually viable and we can cover it. That's kind of on the, but we have to keep the placeholder there. And then we have 2 capacity charge projects for La Contenta and Copper Cove. So the total cash flow on the wastewater side is $1,870,000. Remember, we don't have as much in the way of capital R&R funds to fund these projects. And then the total, as we do water, I should say, and the total CIP water and wastewater is $7,770,000. That's the cash flow required for next year. Funding sources, $40,000 from expansion funds, R&R, 1.63 million, and we're looking for grants of 200,000. That's for the Vallecito Storage Pond project.
Jeff,
Any questions at this point?
just a comment regarding expanding wastewater treatment plants for additional storage, and I know we're looking at this, finding ways to make use of that treated wastewater in agriculture and other ways. I hope we continue to push forward with that, considering the quality of the water we've got at Douglas Flat, and look at it as a revenue source instead of a nasty to get rid of kind of thing. And then any other place that we have tertiary treated water or something that could be allocated out to agriculture, we should be using that as a revenue source and find ways to partner up with our agricultural community and our wine, grape lines, et cetera.
Absolutely.
It's a distribution problem.
Yeah, it is. You're right.
And financing, and that's the.
They may
I was
do it.
neglect in stating that part of this project is also a discharge permit process, paying for that to be able to
To do that.
discharge at a higher level.
Great, thank you.
Now, I know there's public comment and questions from the board, and your questions from the board. However, I also, if I'm not mistaken, at least one of your board members will not be here at the next meeting. Is that correct?
I will not be correct.
Okay. My hope is at this particular point in time, your board gives us direction to bring this back on the 24th as is, and then we have your blessing per se, so that we have a consensus here of everybody at this particular time. I know it's a little unorthodox, but I want to make sure that what we're going to bring back is something that, in general, you will support.
I also won't be, or may not be available for that meeting. I definitely will be out of town. I might be able to attend it via conference call, but you do have my blessing on this. I know it's not the same as a vote, but, and I do appreciate, repeat Director Davidson's sentiment on how much effort has been put into this, and your presentation to dumb it down for us for easy understanding. And obviously, your endurance is back for this presentation. Good job.
He's ready. He's ready to go. He said, "Please give me your okay. I'm gone."
Yeah, it's time for me to do a little more R&R.
Yeah. Director Mills, did you have any
Not at this point.
anything that?
Let's hear from the public.
Well, we'll take a second and he'll think about what he's going to say.
And I am available, even though I won't be in the office until 2 weeks from today. I do receive emails. I've got we were able to set up a workstation at home for me, and I'm able to do some work from home.
Oh, great.
Thank you. Well, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to ask the questions that I did today, is because I won't be here next time. And yeah, thank you for the information, and you answered all my questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do I have some public comment? Oh, I see. Oh, yes.
Hi. 3 points I'd like maybe I can get educated on. One is, I have not seen, and I asked before, and hopefully we get it sooner or later, is what amount of assets you have, real estate assets, that is it a possibility that can turn into, or should be turned into, reducing of your liability? Because unless somebody received recent information on this board meeting, I have not heard anything about the real estate assets you have and how much is it. That's one thing. Also, I happened to come across, looking at some old stuff, is back in, I think it's 2016, revision of water development policy, allocation of assets, establishment of $8 million funds, use policy. Is that got changed? Because I do pay attention to what's going on CCWD.
Excuse me, you used the word number 2016. You meant another year, right?
No, it was done, resolution number 2000/16.
Oh, okay.
And I'm sure you're all very familiar with it, because we do have some directors who was here at that time, because their name is at the bottom of it. And does have certain requirements to work with it. You're talking about $8 million of reserve funds.
Yeah, when I first got on the board, that each director had their own little fund that was made of North Fork money. What we did was we compiled all that into, for lack of a better word, with the $8 million fund, and we were using interest income on that and try to keep it whole. That, I believe, and Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong, is what is compiled of our water rights, the $3 million that we have in there for water rights, the 90-day reserve. It's the same money. It's now we just had to give it specific uses as opposed to just being in one fund. But I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what you're referring to.
I'm referring to the comment. Right.
I believe it would take a 4/5 vote to pull any money out of that.
Yes, sir, it does. And a publication and letting a public hearing and et cetera. We're talking about $8 million was established, and right now,
it's still
there's
there.
No mention of it.
It's still there.
Okay. You have $8 million sitting someplace?
President Underhill, I'd like to address this if possible. Director Davidson, you are correct. This is what I referred to earlier in my presentation of the Interest Reserve Fund, the Fund 108. Right. And when we were talking about the 90-day emergency operating fund, the Reserve for Water Rights Project, CIP cash flow, Reserve for Special Projects, the Rate Stabilization Fund, and that's basically, we're looking at it, it's grown to about $11 million over time. So we do have those funds still in there. And it takes the budget, the board's action on the budget, to be able to utilize those funds. And that's what your board does when you adopt the budget.
Is that a 4/5 vote?
You know, I have to double check to see in the adoption of the budget if it requires 4/5. I believe simple majority is allowed to adopt the budget. Now, in this particular case, each year that I've been here, the full board has approved the budget.
If may I continue? I'm sorry, not to interrupt you, but I want to leave it to you folks. Also, there's something about publication in the newspaper and public hearing on it. Okay. Well, you can look into it. You know more about it than I do, and Mr. Director over there can fill you in on all the small details. But for 50 cents, I'll make a copy for you, sir.
Please let me address that. We do announce, if I'm not mistaken, Mona, for the board adoption, we announce that in the newspaper?
For 2 weeks. Yeah.
For 2 weeks, the adoption of the budget.
About this $8 million. Now, next thing is, I'll be very happy with the work he did, but I will be happier if we have a little different results from the independent auditor compared to what happened the past couple of years. That's when I'm going to be happy. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Your budget transfers. This sticks out like a sore thumb. I objected to this last year. I'm going to object to it again. Going back to the rate increase in 2013, subsequent to that rate increase, the board passed a motion that said that those monies collected under the rate increase could not be touched unless it was approved by 4 of the 5 members of the board. And I specifically remember a month later, at another open meeting here, a former director sitting where Director Strange is sitting right now asked you, Jeff, that could this money in any way, shape, or form, portions of it be taken out and moved to the general fund? And you said no. Those monies could not be taken out. They are locked up, solid. Now, last year, the budget came up with a gimmick. You have a different name for it, and I'll call it a gimmick. And if my memory serves me correct, you took about $157,000 of the rate increase monies and moved it to the general fund for payroll purposes. This year, you're moving about $328,000 from those monies into the general fund for payroll purposes again. If you're going to continue this gimmick, I would ask, I'd like to say demand, but I can't do that. I would request that this board make that $328,000 transfer a separate motion unto itself that would require an 80% vote, in other words, 4 of the 5 votes of this board to approve that. Thank you.
I think I can address this one. As the person who made that motion that you're talking about, Mr. Duncan, the 4/5 vote and using all the new money from the capital improvement program going forward, that all that money would be used for capital improvement projects, and it still is. In lieu of using outside vendors, we use our own personnel to do those projects. Engineering, and we've increased engineering. We've increased engineering because of the capital improvement projects. So we need more engineers instead of having outside vendors doing the work and using the capital improvement money that way, which would make it more obvious to you. Maybe it wouldn't be much as seem like a gimmick in your mind, but we're using our own personnel
exactly
to do that.
what you're saying.
Excuse me, sir. I think I have the floor.
Pardon me.
But I'm trying to address or answer your question. So it's not a gimmick. We're actually using the personnel, the cost for the labor of in-house people for capital improvement projects.
It's a completely different way to look at the same scene. I look at it one way, you look at it a completely different way. If you have a person sitting at a desk and he's doing whatever projects he has been assigned to do, at the end of that pay period, you have to write him a check regardless of what he's working on or not. So it shouldn't make any difference whether 5 minutes of his time is put on a R&R project or whatever. And how you would quantify that, I'd say, is probably pretty much impossible, and that these are probably somewhat estimated.
No, tracking labor.
This is public comment period, right?
Okay, yeah. And tracking labor is not that complicated. Thank you. But thank you. I've said my point answered your question. I think
You have to make their payroll check anyway, regardless of what they're doing. This is a gimmick, and it's designed to take money and move it to the general fund from monies you said you weren't going to do to begin with. And that's breaking a promise of this board from that time.
Okay.
Excuse me, don't I remember that R&R funds were exclusively for R&R, regardless of what it is, regardless of what it is, whether
This is not a gimmick. This is normal practice. We can track our engineers and the hours that they put on a project and pay them for that. I mean, there's a total cost of any project, and that includes we can track staff time so we can accurately account for that. This is nothing that is out of the norm.
And I just want to, and I just reiterate that. I know it's public comment, but the alternative would be to hire consultants at a much higher rate. And again, this is something I've had this conversation ongoing since I got here with the board. I would much rather pay our staff, who I have more confidence in. I think there's a check and balance, and I think they, you're going to see some of them here today. You can talk to them. You know where they are if we have questions about how our projects are going. I'd rather have them doing it than somebody sitting in an office in Sacramento or LA or somewhere else. So
local preference now should be here in San Andreas.
Angels Camp.
Joe Fontana from Murphy Sanitary. A couple of things that I listened to the presentation, and I really enjoyed the presentation. I didn't think it was dry and boring. When I was in private business, one of the things that we tried to do, we used to buy all our equipment cash. When you spend $100,000 or $200,000, you don't have it anymore. One of the tricks that we did in our budgeting is we went to lease to own and took the money and made monthly payments. And then after a period of time, 5 or 6 years, depending on the depreciation of the item we were buying, we would have zeroed out. And we also, in that, we would take and get a maintenance contract where the vendor, there's a graph that shows where your maintenance costs start accelerating over your normal costs, monthly costs. we really realized a huge savings on an ongoing basis once we started doing that. And in some of the facilities, I had 150 forklifts. And when you start talking about that many pieces of equipment, and you have to replace them every so many years, and you track the maintenance costs, it's astronomically expensive to just go out and buy. So I would encourage that. The other thing that we at Murphy's, we are trying to get on a GSI program. We were looking at buying the software for it, and this is another issue that we are partnering with the county and their GSI program. I would encourage CCWD to also do that. If we could get one GSI program for the whole county where everything was mapped and we could see that when we did our projects, I think there would be a lot of benefits where we could then partner with each other, reducing the cost to the ratepayer, so that we are all looking at the same picture, and then we find that we have commonality. So those are the two things I have to say. Thanks very much.
Thank you. All right.
Joe Kelly, just a couple of things. The gentleman presenting made comment about the capital improvements, or I'm sorry, the expenditures of a used trailer for 20 grand. Yet your capital outlay page on page 12 of the same document and on the small page 9 says it's N for new. So I think, you know, I'm kind of nitpicking, but I would say that it could have a potential of fouling the wheels up a little bit. I'd like to see that change if it's brought back to the board so it is an R rather than an N. So it fully goes through, flows through from the very front saying it's used, and all the capital outlay documents say it's used also being replacement rather than new, unless there's something I'm missing.
Madam President, the designation on that column is it new to the district, or is it a replacement of an existing vehicle or a piece of equipment? This particular dump trailer is going, even though it's used, it's a new piece of equipment to the district for a new purpose. That's why I designated it new.
Thank you. The other thing on this trailer would be, what do you use as parameters for age of the truck and potential if they have mileage meters on an axle, or do you just use a base year of the manufacturer of the trailer for the replacement?
This is a new to us piece of equipment. We've done this several times this year where we've had to buy dump trailers for our wastewater treatment plants. We're looking at our experience in buying the last couple dump trailers. We go out to the used market and try to find the best possible deal out there, and then we record it as the actual purchase price. That then becomes our baseline for our fixed asset, and we depreciate from that point on. These particular dump trailers are not going to get a lot of significant use on them per se, because they're basically holding places, and then they're transferred down when we ship it out of county. So we look at this as a piece of equipment that's going to be used for quite some time.
Okay, my second to last question would be, it was brought out about elections and Mr. Davidson's term. Could that be explained to we the people so we understand what that's all about, that it would be more, the concept of appointment came up rather than an election, so you're saving a budget, some monies. My other issue would be on salaries and that for the board. Is it possibly that a program could be put together to be sent out periodically on the ratepayers' bill, or so that they would understand exactly what the board is being paid, the full expenses of the board, either by district or by board members? Thank you.
Further public comment? Seeing none, will you have your direction?
Well, I'm content. I think it's it's a budget we have to have. It's, hopefully that we'll have some drought relief that'll help us, but, these are all things that we have to do, so I'm content with moving the budget forward.
You've satisfied any questions I have, Jeff, as we went along. Thank you very much, you and Patty, for your...
Thank you, Madam President.
Yeah.
And again, I'd like to thank Patty, who this process would not have moved forward without her.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. Then we're set for it to come back.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we just need a direction on this, and again, we just want to make sure if there's anything that really concerns you, questions, anything like that, we have the opportunity to address that before we come back. I want you to, obviously you're not taking an action on what we're presenting, but I want you to feel comfortable in what you'll see next time.
I think that forefront in your mind, because I've heard it from you several times in our discussions, is the continual efforts that you are trying to find to improve productivity or lower the overall cost of doing a particular item. And we continue to work towards that end, even though the budget sometimes is constraining us as to where we can go with it. We still have to look at when we're going to start setting aside money for our relicensing on North Fork. We're going to have to start looking to be sure that we have the reserves necessary to meet our obligations into the future, not just with on-the-ground projects, but also our water rights and other things that are out there. So I hope the board understands the importance of not just what we have in place, but we can't continue to transfer in money from reserve accounts without realizing that that's a takeaway to our future and the important piece that it's going to represent for us down the road.
Yeah, I think I'd just reiterate my interest in looking to increase revenue, non-customer-based revenues, and I think it's really very important for us to move that forward. And I understand that a lot of this budget, especially the water rights increasing funding to support that effort, is critical for that. So,
I appreciate the balanced budget, and I remember our general manager saying he is looking, and we are exhausting every aspect that we can to improve the revenue that we have. I mean, we're looking at the decrease, and even though it's been raining for 4 days, there is no relief to the drought. Want to make that very clear. We will not back down from any of our conservation measures, and instead we will be looking for ways to supplement our income. That's all we can do.
Yes, and that was actually one of the goals that the board had adopted earlier this year. We went through that process, so I'm very mindful of that, and we will be coming back to future agenda items to address just that.
All right. So we can go on to item number 6, General Manager's report.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I want to lead off just by introducing, you've heard a lot about him as we talked about the budget and our development of the engineering group, but I wanted to introduce 2 of our new staff in the engineering group. And actually, Charles, our Director of Engineering. Charles, if you wouldn't mind introducing Bob and Sam, I'd appreciate it. As you know, Charles is the Director of our engineering group. When I got here, it was Charles, Robbie as a engineering technician, and Tammy is a half-time allocated person in engineering. And so we've been able to expand that to where we have a senior engineer now and another engineering technician, and in time we'll have an admin tech for engineering. So, yeah, go ahead, Charles.
So this is Bob. I'm Bob Godwin, and he's got 27 years of experience. He's been with us for 4 weeks now. 4 weeks. 4 weeks, and he's my equal in talent and abilities, and he's a senior engineer for us, and he's got some great background in wastewater too, so which is a strength. He's stronger in wastewater than I am, so I'm happy to have him as a resource. Because we do have quite a few wastewater plants, and permit issues, and so that'll be a great asset to the district. And, you know, also, as we're talking about our program is necessary, and also grants, it's necessary to have sufficient personnel to cover all the bases and make sure that our interests are met. So we're happy to have Bob on board.
Bob, and if you, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say, if you could briefly just let us know where you were before you came here, and just briefly your background.
Yes, as he mentioned, I've been in this industry for the last 27 years as a design engineer and as a civil engineer. My personal experience has been primarily in the consulting industry. I worked for 2 consulting firms for 24 years of that period. My last contract, or my last employer was Cal Water Service Company, or Cal Water Service Group, which is the design group that works underneath the company, where I was a design engineer on the potable water supply and distribution and treatment side of the industry. As Charles mentioned, I'm, however, more of a wastewater engineer than a water engineer, but you know, you have to sometimes wear 2 hats in this industry.
Are you new to well, obviously you're new to Calaveras County?
Yes, I am.
And
I've actually worked for you as a consultant in the past on a project in Copper Cove, which was the improvements that were made to the treatment ponds and the headworks itself. And I have worked for the City of Angels in the past, and for Gary Dio, and for El Dorado Irrigation District. I'm a resident of actually Elk Grove, so I have a little bit of a commute coming here, but you know, I'm very enthusiastic to work for this board and for this community and for this company or district.
Well, welcome and congratulations.
And welcome to you. Thank you.
And any time there's anything you need, I'm certainly able to help or provide any information that you desire.
Thank you.
And we also have another new employee. Well, not quite new. we transferred from the Jenny Lynn Water Treatment Plant into the engineering department, Sam Singh, who is he does have a degree in engineering, mechanical engineering, and he's got 7 years of experience down at the Jenny Lynn Water Plant, so all really great experience that will benefit the district in the future, especially as he transitions into the engineering department. So, you know, he's going to be helping us with some tasks that have kind of fallen to the wayside. So a lot of our maps are out of date, and you know, a lot of our crews in the field depend on those. So it'll be, and we've done a lot of projects, Flying Acres, West Point, system improvements that haven't made it on the maps yet. So Sam will start out helping us with that, and we'll transition him into some more challenging efforts, which I'm sure he's going to handle fine. So, Sam, do you want to say anything?
Like Charles said, my name is Sam Singh, and I've worked with the Water District for the past 7.5 years now. And every day I'm growing and I'm learning new things and making a transition over from being a water treatment operator and seeing things how it worked in the field, and trying to implement those and help the guys better with the engineering ways and with my educational background. Hopefully we'll bring a positive change and take things from here, learning something new.
That's terrific, to be able to bring people up from within. That's fantastic.
I was curious, did you have your degree, or did you earn it while you've been employed, or did you have it before?
I had it before I started in the field, but like I said, I graduated in 2007. It was the worst time to find jobs, but I was lucky enough to get a job as a water treatment operator. It was a good learning experience, and from there on, with my abilities and you know, with the good graces, and I'm here.
Well, you know, and I'm so happy we were able to offer you the opportunity to come through the ranks, so that it's just wonderful.
Thank you, President.
Yeah, I'd like to welcome both of you. My only concern is, as engineers, I don't see pocket protectors.
Welcome. They all do kind of look alike, don't they? They kind of dress alike. They're almost the same height. Everything about them is identical. See, I could joke this way. I grew up in a family of engineers. I took a lot of pain and suffering from these guys.
Boy, they must have been disappointed.
I think so. They just didn't say it.
Well, as long as they've gotten you your nameplate, and that means you're in.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very
Welcome.
much.
All right, and I just wanted to, I know we've got some closed session items. I'll try to keep this brief. But I wanted to let you know, Blue Lake Springs, there was an update on that, our ongoing meetings with BLS. We had this as a subject at our meeting this last week. We continue to work with them, their staff and council, to try to come up with an arrangement that's fair and equitable to us, them, and those that we serve, that can provide the long-term framework so that they can acquire some of their water supplies now, operate a conjunctive use system, and then if needed, come in and purchase more of their water supply from us. So that's still ongoing. There's still some issues to work out. We're looking at possibly bringing in one of our on-call consultants who developed the capacity charge fee, the update to that for the Ebbets Pass area, and the system master plan up there update, having them come in and help us to try to resolve the issue of what is really an equitable buy-in and buy-up capacity fee for them to obtain service from us. And I hope to have that on the agenda soon with something that, again, we can resolve this. I also wanted to note, we've got on our conservation efforts, I really appreciate all the hard work that our staff are doing on that, and Joel in particular. We found that in the last month, and for May, reporting for May, we were actually down 22% as compared to the year before in 2014, and 37% down from the 2013, May of 2013. So our cumulative average right now for the year for 2015 is 22%. So, it's really applaud. I really want to thank our customers in the community for realizing this is so important, and it's good to see the signage we've got out there, the response that we have, and community interest. And I'm really proud that we're making it work in a way that's not making, turning our staff into water cops and not making our members of the community feel like they have to turn on each other, but instead we're trying to do it cooperatively and really rally behind what we need to do to get through this drought. I also wanted to lastly note that we have that there's one the trailer bill that's in the legislature, the state legislature right now, that we received notice on. It's really interesting. It's actually rallied basically every organization representing local government, counties, cities, even LAFCO Association, Aqua, a bunch of them are responding to this because it's a bill that was slipped in as a budget trailer bill. It doesn't go through the policy and financial committee vetting that you normally have on a bill. And the bill contemplates that the State Water Board would have the authority to be able to force consolidations of other water systems, like private water systems, potentially mutual water systems, into another agency like ours. We're still dealing with a lot of the effects, like we talked about, some of the financing that we have to continue to have the responsibility for, and other systems that came in. If you can do that in a way that's mutually beneficial, and it's an arrangement that is cooperative, that's great. But if it's being forced upon you from the state, that's a pretty scary situation, and potentially could leave us with a lot of responsibility and liability, and a system that may not be up to standards as far as what we have and would expect. So we'll continue to watch that, and there's a hearing coming up. I plan to submit a letter on behalf of the district. We haven't taken a position on this bill. It's so rapidly developed that we really haven't had that opportunity, but I will just to reiterate the same concerns that have been put on paper by Aqua and others, that this is something we would be very concerned about, and should be handled in the traditional legislative process if it is going to be considered. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Okay. And we are old business. We have nothing to report. Board reports.
Looking forward to tomorrow's field trip on the North Fork system. Other than that, it's just, the same old meetings and this and that. So nothing new and exciting.
I hope I got enough for that for everybody. How many you got there?
Director Mills?
I'm just passing out a copy of my meeting notes for since our last meeting. And yes, I'll be joining that North Fork project tour as well. I think almost everyone is going to be on it, right? So that's going to be really a good thing. And then the Highway 4 Corridor Committee is coming up that evening. We've got economic development and things going on surrounding that, which is very helpful, which is going to help generate business within the county. So we move forward. We just continue to be active and be engaged to the community and listening to what they have to say. Thank you.
I attended the Blue Lake Springs shareholders meeting. That was a very interesting organization because, in fact, you have the shareholders meeting, which is the 2,500 lots, and then on top of that, you have the homeowners association, and then on top of that, you have the Blue Lake Springs Water District. So it's to get through all of that is quite interesting, and they're very engaged with us, and you know, we have a two-way engagement on coming up with a feasible or an acceptable water relationship, and so they look forward to our getting back to them, and well, we're in the process of exchanging letters or proposals, so we'll do that. And I'm going to have to pass on the tour tomorrow, but I will be at the Highway 4 meeting tomorrow night.
I also am planning on going on a tour tomorrow of the North Fork project. It's been looking forward to seeing that for some time now. Also, next Monday is in Placerville is Aqua Region 3 meeting on this, I think the subject is water conservation, and I also plan on attending that as well. And then our next meeting, which I think is scheduled for June 24th. I will be out of town and maybe in attendance. I still have to plan that out, and I'll be in touch with our administrative staff here. Thank you.
I have nothing to report. I will not be going on the tour though.
Okay, information, future agenda items. There was one that was thrown out.
Yeah, the idea of the local preference and revisiting the minimum non-competitive bidding kind of thing. So, yeah, if we could agendize the discussion of that, that'd be great.
Okay. Item 9, next board meeting would be Wednesday, June the 24th, and then the following meeting would be Wednesday, July the 8th. Item 10, closed session.
Madam Chairman, before you go into that, did you have a future agenda item or information on a panel? You were going to create a, or is that another meeting?
We'll catch that.
Okay.
Okay. We'll discuss that.
Okay.
Okay. 10A, conference with labor negotiators, manager and confidential unit, Government Code 54957.6. Negotiators Dave Egerton and Stacy Lawler. 10B, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Government Code 54956.9A, La Contenta Investors LTD versus CCWD, Calaveras County Superior Court, number 11 CV 37713. 10C, conference with legal counsel, potential litigation, Government Code 54956.9D4, one case. 10D, public employee performance evaluation, Government Code 54957, general manager. Quite a closed session.
Ask for public comment.
Public comment?
On the closed session.
On the closed session items. Seeing none? Move to closed session.